I'm Nick Von Walkerbarth, and you're listening to the Von Dubcast. If you don't want to listen to me gap in the intro and you want to skip right to the interview, skip about 14 minutes. But before you do, please consider doing one of these couple things that really helps out the show. Following the social medias for the Von Dubcast, subscribing, and leaving a review. If you could do those things, that'd be awesome. Also, give me a subscription on the YouTube channel. That'd be great. Hey, everybody. Welcome to episode number 97 of the Von Dubcast. Got a really fun one for you guys today. Had my buddy Mike Sheehan back on. He's been on the podcast before. We talked about a lot about music, a lot about John Mayer. We're both absolute fanatics for John Mayer, and we kind of just have been, connecting over John Mayer for years on social media. And we live very far apart. He lives in Eastern US, and I live in Western Canada, so we couldn't be farther apart. But just it doesn't really matter the distance these days if you find someone you connect with. So we'd always hop on Instagram Lives and play guitar. Well, he usually would. I'm too shy for that kind of stuff, but he would, and I would hop in, and he would just pick up. He was way behind me in terms of how many years he'd been playing, but way further ahead in terms of actual talent and what he could do. So when I first started watching him play, he'd only been playing for, I don't know, less than a year probably, but he would already be, a little bit past me. So I'd, if there's a song I want to learn, I just go on his Instagram Live and say, hey, try and learn this one. And I just watch him learn it and try and pick up a thing or two from him along the way. So that was kind of how we got started. And then he saw that I was starting the podcast, and we hadn't chatted in a long time. So the first episode we did is kind of just a reconnection and just to talk about something I'm really passionate about. This is something I was thinking about, just how lucky I am that I get to talk about. Like, I feel like sometimes when you have a really strong passion for something esoteric, like John Mayer, for example, right? There's tons of John Mayer fans out there, but it's not like you're going to run into him every day and get to have that kind of in-depth conversation on it. But I just get to have conversations where I chase a really strong passion of mine, then I just get to share it with people. And I just think I'm very, very thankful and very lucky to be able to do that and to have that. So when Mike came on the first time, it was about a week out from John releasing his newest single, and then probably a couple weeks out from releasing Sob Rock, which is the album we talk about today. So we're just bullshitting and decided, you know what, we can't let a new John Mayer album come out and not at least get our 2 cents in on what it's all about. So Mike came back on. We do go song by song through the album and talk about what we like, what we don't like, how it hit us, what we read into the song. I'm sure, everybody can look at a song differently and get something else out of it. So this was just kind of our take on all the songs. It was really fun. I think you guys are going to enjoy it, even if you're not a big John Mayer fan. It's just, I think you'll be able to hear the passion in our voices of just how excited we are about him. And hopefully that rings true and makes it a little bit exciting to listen to. We also talk about plenty of other artists and the music industry and all that stuff. As you know, whatever a topic is, I usually don't stay on that too long with my podcast. I just kind of wander all over the place. So we kind of, talked a lot of John Mayer, but a lot of other stuff as well. Yeah, what else is on the go? So had a great weekend here. Drove up Friday, headed straight to the golf course again, try and get another round in with my dad before end of the season. I'm unvaccinated scum and need to die, so I wasn't allowed out on the course. I had to pull some shenanigans to get out and play, but had a fun round, snuck on and had a fun round with Ingo. Nobody got COVID. It was very scary, out in that wide open with just 2-3 people socially distanced and the wind blowing in your face. I was pretty worried, but nobody caught it. We're all safe, and I know I should be making light of it, but just sure seems silly, some of these rules, and just makes you wonder why people are sick of the rules in general when they have stupid rules like that. Anyways, I had a nice day on Saturday, kind of lazed around, ordered some bad food, had some buddies over, watched the fights. Just an amazing night of fights. Once again, it's crazy to see what the UFC is doing. It's just every weekend. It's appointment viewing. It's the storylines that are coming up every week, the amount of talented fighters that are coming up, the matchmaking. It's just, it's incredible to watch a sport that's so new be on such a trajectory. And if you are watching as closely as I am, you just know this is just the start. And it's crazy for people to see how much it's grown. But to understand it and know that it's just the tip of the iceberg, and this sport is just going to keep growing. It's so exciting for me. I just love every weekend knowing that there's going to be a huge shakeup. And now Ariel Helwani, the best journalist in the game, actually the best sports journalist period in any sport for my money. I think he's gone back independent, and he does his own podcast 2 times a week where he does these 3-hour epic episodes that are live and have, fighters calling in and all this kind of stuff. It's incredible. So, you go into a weekend like this where you have just these big shakeups in the division and these big storylines that are diverging. Usually, like you go into a weekend with probably, 15 big storylines, right? With different fighters along and how those storylines intersect with the rest of the division and stuff. And then you get to come in for a whole week and you watch these amazing journalists just chop it up and explore what these mean and hear from the fighters. And because there's such a amazing journalistic atmosphere around the sport, these fighters open up and they talk about it, and they aren't just given, the in-between period interview, get pucks deep type of interview that you get in other sports. It's actually in depth. They're talking about their emotions and what they're feeling and what they think for their career and selling themselves, and they just understand it so much. I'm just so thankful to be this, to have a sport that I love this much and that gives so much back. It's awesome to be an MMA fan right now. So had a great night of fights, hopped in the hot tub, listened to some tunes, had a great night, and then woke up this morning and threw the Ryder Cup on. I don't know if you guys follow golf at all, but the Ryder Cup happens every 4 years, every 2 years. I think it's every 2 years, because I think there's the Ryder Cup and then there's another cup that's similar, and they switch off every second year. There's one or the other, but it's just been spectacular golf. Wasn't ever the biggest golf fan, but just the more I get into it, the more I listen to Chase, talk about the sport and what it is at its core and what the level 3 and 4 and 5. And I think as a casual fan, you just kind of see the basic level. You understand the rules at a very, mediocre level, but just as you start to understand the intricacies and again, just like I like in MMA, the storylines, like watching Brooks Koepka and Bryson DeChambeau, knowing what they're going into this week with all the storylines surrounding that, and watching them win here, and the famous hug, the Bryson and Brooks hug at the end, that kind of put everything else, all that bad blood to rest, at least for now. Who knows what happens next weekend on the tour, but that's what's really fun about golf. And I think that's what they're learning. I think all sports are learning from MMA right now about how important storylines are. And tradition's one thing, but if you can allow a little bit more freedom to let these storylines shine through, you're just going to reap the benefits. I think the NBA is starting to do it with allowing social media. You can put up any clips of highlights and stuff on social media with the NBA. I think that's a brilliant move. I think it's exciting. I think the internet is just changing so many things, and people are just exploring these new ways of trying these things that are steeped in tradition, like sports, and you just get to see the next levels of where it's going. And I think that's where I look at MMA and see how much further out ahead they are and how much farther they have to go. It's really interesting to see what pieces are going to be picked up along the way for the rest of sports. So yeah, that was fun. Watching that tournament today, it's just been nothing but spectacular golf and just really good production. I don't know. I'm the slow one to the game and this golf stuff. There's probably people listening and saying, yeah, no, this stuff's been awesome to watch for years, and you're just an idiot that didn't try it. But that very well maybe that would be pretty par for the course. Yeah. What else is going on in life and in general? Usually I have a little bit of things written down. I didn't go into this one with as much prepared as I usually do. Ryder Cup, UFC pay-per-view, talked about that. Oh, Sober October. Yeah. So then the other thing, I know if you guys have been listening for a while, you'll see that I did a little bit of a Sober October type of thing last year, modeled off of kind of Joe Rogan's Sober October they did with Bert and Tom and Ari all those years. And I think they're doing it again this year, but I'll probably do a podcast on this specifically to tell you kind of what I'm feeling. Just there's so much I want to tell you guys about. There's so much I'm going through, and I hate hinting at things. It's just sometimes there's just things that you need to kind of address. And as much as I want to be open with you guys, sometimes it's just not the right thing. So I think I might do like a podcast talking about, all the things that I'm going through right now. It's with all these changes come October 1st. I'm so excited to dive into this full time and take a little bit of a break and recover my mental health. And I'm so excited to do all those things, get back reading, get back playing guitar, get back doing all these things that I've kind of let falter these last 4 years. So I'm really excited about that. And then, with that though, I don't want to jump into kind of what I did last year with the Sober October of, cutting everything off, eating healthy, no pop, no, just like straight water, no alcohol, no weed, no nothing, just going right to the wood. I'm kind of thinking I might try a different tack this year. And like I said, I might do a full podcast on this once I flesh out the ideas I have a little bit more, but it might be a little bit more in the middle zone where I kind of just do the same thing I did last year, where I document everything on an Instagram story at the end of the day, kind of saying what I did on that day within Sober October, of the things I was trying to do, like if I got a stretch in, if I did not an ice bath, like a cold shower, how much reading I got in, that type of thing, just to hold myself accountable, but not put anything in play of strictly what I can and can't do, of just holding myself accountable. If I know at the end of these days, I'm going to have to, put out to the world what I did and how much I'm keeping to the spirit of Sober October without maybe locking myself down completely, just to maybe, I think just for my mental health, I think it's just not the time to be adding any more layers of crazy to my life right now with everything I've got going on. I'm sure I can add more context to that in a full interview or a full episode of solo Von Dubcast magic, but you guys will see. So I'm excited to tell you guys about that. Excited for things that are coming, but not really sure what else to say on that one until I get closer to it. So other than that, Mike doesn't really have much to plug. He just, we just like to get along. We get along good, and we like to just bullshit music and bullshit John Mayer and not feel like that weirdo. That's just that obsession when you have somebody else that's just as much of a weirdo about it as you. It makes you feel really, it really opens you up to explore the depths of your own thoughts on the subject, where usually, just regular decorum dictates that you would never do that in a normal conversation. It's nice to just let it buck like that. And it's just a sign of things to come, where I just hope to do this more and more, where just these really esoteric passions of mine, like, certain artists or fighters or painters or authors, that I can just have them on and pick their brains in that in-depth way of really, diving into the passions, instead of kind of keeping yourself closed off and just, trying to be cool about the things that you're passionate about, of just letting that all fall away and just, lean into how much of a nerd I really am on some of this stuff. Like, I can't imagine sometime in the future, if you ever, once, I shouldn't say if, when I ever get, maybe a developer on like The Legend of Zelda or something, one of my old favorite video games, or, one of my favorite authors, like, you guys are going to see what a kid in a candy store and what the true depths of my nerddom extends to. So I'm excited for that. Other than that, just if you could do me a favor, share this podcast with anybody you think would enjoy it. If you know somebody that really enjoys podcasts in their life, pass it their way. If ever there's an episode that really speaks to you or speaks to someone please pass them on to them. Give the follow on all the social medias. If you leave a review on Apple Podcasts, apparently that really helps with all their algorithms and stuff. I haven't looked too much into that. I'm going to have to come October 1st when this is my full-time job, and I'm excited for that too. But it's nice just kind of being at this point, and I think that's the other part of this too, is I'm just enjoying this time of enjoying just making the content and concentrating on that. And I know that come October 1st, I'm really have to switch gears and try and get sponsors and try and advertise and do all that stuff and really throw my hat in the ring on that. But it's nice just to enjoy this last week of all I have to concentrate on is that the episodes that get put out, the conversations that are had are good, and I'm just kind of sitting in that and enjoying that for this last week. But having said that, I'm also really excited to flip that switch completely and dive all the way into the more business side of the podcast and really get that started, and hopefully bring on some helpful people to start building a team and making some of these dreams I have a reality sooner rather than later. So I'm excited. I hope you guys have a great ass week. I hope you kick ass every day. Like I say all the time, if you love somebody, tell them. Even if it's your friends, even if you're a dude and it's another dude, you can say it. It's okay. Just say it all the time. Say it more. Spread love, spread compassion, love everybody else. I know it's tough right now, but that's all we can ask. If you lead by example, the world will be a better place. So enjoy this episode. Let me know what you think, and I'll see you in the outro. All right. Thank you so much for coming back on, Mike. I was just re-listening to our episode that we did before. And I know you said that was your first podcast, but man, you sound like a natural. You can talk, hey?
Oh, yeah. Well, no. Hey, thanks so much for having me back. I think part of it too is like, it was just so nice to actually like get a chance to talk to you, because we've been talking through Instagram for years now.
Yeah.
It was nice to actually like just hear each other out and let's like talk, I mean, yeah. I'm not in the room with you, but like, we're right here. We're having a good time.
It's as close as you can get considering the times, hey, and it's
Yeah.
awesome. And we knew we would have to do this because I think last time we recorded was maybe a couple weeks out of the release of Sob Rock by John Mayer. Yeah. And as soon as I think every time John Mayer releases another album from now until the end of time, we're gonna have to hop on it and shoot the shit about it. So I mean,
perfect. I'm here for it.
It was an inevitability that this would happen. But before we get into Sob Rock, I have to start off with an apology because in listening to our episode again this morning in prep, I realized that you told me about this guy named Tom Misch. And and I did not do my due diligence. I did not listen to any Tom Misch. So on my run, as soon as I finished the episode, I just threw on his, just top results on Apple Music. And holy shit, dude, that guy is legit. Like, whoa. Every song was like banger, banger, banger. I probably listened to like 10, 15 tunes of his, and they're to a T, each one, like that funky style, that little bit of a twist on it. That little bit of weirdness that I love in my music. Like and just like the, that funk, but also the basics and the foundation that he has of just his musical ability that now lets him go into all these different routes. And oh man, he is awesome.
It's awesome. Yeah, and the cool thing, like I said, I mean, I think we kind of touched on it briefly this last podcast, but like, so growing up, like I was in high school, I found him at Majestic Casual, like 2014-ish. He's my age.
Yeah.
And he wanted to make music, grew up in a musical family. I think his sister Laura plays saxophone. His dad played like cello or like violin. So music and art was very important to Tom growing up. And he just, like I said, I mean, I know there are people on SoundCloud, like rappers on SoundCloud. Like that's normally what you think when you hear SoundCloud. I always think of Tom Misch. That dude figured it out at such a young age. I mean, he come home from school, make a beat, throw it on SoundCloud every day. Every day he just started kind of slowly getting these people. You're like, oh, this is pretty chill. And, he has his own record label out of his bedroom.
Wow. Now
I think this was how we started talking about Nick. He really went DIY and just was like, I can make this happen. But yeah, no, Tom Misch, Geography is a masterpiece, start to finish. Beat Tape 2, Beat Tape 1. I mean, everything he's put out, I'm just like, oh my gosh. And during quarantine, during this crisis of the COVID, he was putting out little covers, just like instrumental loops that he was doing. And he just recorded all those and dropped them like randomly. I think last week or the week before, he's like, hey, these are all these covers I did. I mastered them all. I hope you guys like them. Here you go. And it's awesome. And there's one song with Marcos Valle, who's a Brazilian, kind of like jazz fusion. It's been around since like the 60s, but he and Tom have this song together. It's one of Marcos Valle's songs, like Pedro Brins, or I don't know how to pronounce it. I don't speak Portuguese, but it is such a tuner. I mean, it just works so well. And they recorded their like parts separately and Tom just put them together and it's awesome. You got to check it out.
Yeah, I definitely will. And that's one of those things when I love having an artist that you really, really love and to see them take their take on other people's music. I think Ed Sheeran was a perfect example of this, of like, if you go on YouTube and just watch all the covers that Ed Sheeran has done of all these tunes that, you never want to, compare something against the original. It's just they're two different things, but man, can an argument be made that Ed Sheeran has done better than a lot of others on the song. And same with John Mayer, like some of his covers, like his Message in a Bottle cover to this day. Like, and I don't want to speak ill of Tom Petty. I mean, he's always the greatest, but like John Mayer's Free Fallin' is just like, you know what I mean? Like I love having those artists that you just love so much. And then to see these great songs, but just done in their style. And it's like expanding their catalog in this, I don't know, maybe you could make an argument that it's a cheap way, but to a fan, I don't care. Covers, original, whatever it is, as long as I get more of you and it's still got your authentic taste on it, which guys like Ed Sheeran and John Mayer really do with the music, I'm here for it. Cover all the shit, like just.
Oh, dude, I love that shit. I mean, so Free Falling, Message in a Bottle.
Yeah.
Even when you just see John Mayer jump on songs and he's not singing but just playing guitar, you're like,
yeah,
this is cool. And the guy, he's just so good. Like I know that we gushed about him on like pretty heavy in the last podcast, and we're gonna go like John Mayer on this one, but like I just found something the other day. I gotta send it to you. It's early 2000s. It's an intro for No Such Thing, and it's like a graduation speech. He's like, good luck finding me in that graduation picture. I had better things to do that day. Don't you bother playing back that graduation tape because you took my cap and gown away. And like he just talks about it and you're like, oh my God, like this guy lyrically, and watching him do stuff live, especially, he just pulls shit out of the like thin air.
Yeah.
There's a video. It was on the Search for Everything tour. There was a girl who was holding a sign that said, I know you love me. And he's like, "That's a good song idea." And he just starts singing the song. He just completely makes up. The band like falls into play. It is awesome. It's like, can this be like a song? And it would have been perfect on Sob Rock. I will send it to you later. And be like, "Oh yeah, this is Sob Rock."
It's so funny. I was actually in preparation for this. I was thinking of so lately I found another artist, and I knew we'd get into this. I don't know if I mentioned it to you, but she's an artist out of Australia, and her name is Tash Sultana. I don't know if you've ever heard of her, but
that name sounds so familiar.
It is incredible what she does. She plays like a million instruments, does everything with loops like Ed Sheeran does, but just puts it all together and just plays these incredible albums, all start to finish, just her on stage, like with all these instruments.
Yeah.
And I was just trying to think of like when I hear her, and I've just been obsessed. I haven't listened to, like, I'm a big podcast guy and I usually listen to like a ridiculous amount of podcasts a week, but in the last probably month and a half, I've probably cut my podcast listening in half because I just can't stop listening to her music. Like it's just taken over everything. And I feel like I haven't felt this in so long, of finding an artist that like each and every song. And for some reason, I kept thinking of her in the same realm of the John Mayers and the Ed Sheerans. And I was trying to put like words to what it is about those people, right? Like specifically John, but I see it in Ed Sheeran and I also see it in Tash Sultana. It's this idea, and I'm just trying to form it in my head. So I might be a little bit off on this, but it just seems like it's just like a mastery of music itself. Of like, it seems like guys like John Mayer and Ed Sheeran, and I feel like Tash Sultana is on a similar level, is just they get to this point where they can do everything. Like they fully understand music, not just their one corner of music that they've learned. Like I'm really good with acoustic. I'm really good with this. It's just, you see them on so many different instruments, so many different, right? Like they so clearly understand music to a level and all the intricacies and all the layers down from the top of what you can get away with being and being a good artist, right? Like I think you'll see, you know, like the regular pop artists are the things that have a really good handle on that base level, but just when you have that complete mastery, what is able to come out. And I think you see it in the live music. And I think you see that with John Mayer, Ed Sheeran, and Tash Sultana so much, because they can do an album. They could take an album, play it live, 15 different shows, and you're going to see 15 completely different shows, right? Like even with the exact same music, because they just understand it so much that they get the freedom that opens up for them to play within it is just so amazing and so much fun to watch. And it's only something that I've started to appreciate later on. Like I think and I think you pick up on it. I think that's what brings people to them. I think that's something that even if you're not very musical, like I think me and you would enjoy John Mayer very differently than somebody that maybe wasn't as into music in general as we are, because we get to, you know, really dig into what makes him so special. But I think like people that even don't understand that are picking up of, hey, this is different. You know, when they watch a video of Ed Sheeran going up on stage with his guitar and a loop pedal and watch what he does and what he can create, is that, oh, that's a little bit different there. That's another level, right? And people can kind of recognize it, but it's so much fun to understand those levels and what they're doing. And I'm sure it's different for you because you are, you know, levels above me and your understanding of music too. So it's just cool. I wonder, I'm curious to you as you are getting more in depth into your love of music and your abilities with music, has your enjoyment of like guys like John Mayer changed at all? Like how you listen to it?
I'd say, yeah. I mean, especially so going back to something you said earlier, made me think of it. I've been lucky enough to see John Mayer 4 times. And Bastard. I know, right? I'm the first, but I've also had the privilege, like sometimes, you know, he's going to repeat some songs, which I don't care. I love everything. There's not a John Mayer song that I don't love. There are ones I love more than others, but I still love them all. Mm-hmm. And like you said, like I have seen different versions of Belief. Like I think I've heard Belief, I think every time I've seen them, and they're all different. And they all, the band's locked in, that everyone takes different solos. Everybody does different things. And you're never like, well, I wish this was more like the album. You're like, let him be creative. Yeah. And they are. And he is so capable and creative enough that he can do whatever he wants and he'll take it to that next place. And everyone's locked in. And I think Ed Sheeran's similar. I mean, like I said earlier, how we were talking about the Graduation one, like how John pulls, like he's very good at like ad-libbing things and then just kind of like throwing things on top of it. Ed Sheeran's really good about it. I just recently saw Dave Matthews Band for the first time. Yeah. It was very less than a thing, but like that band is phenomenal. And I know there are people who are like, oh, Dave Matthews Band. It's kind of the same shit you get from being a John Mayer fan, but like, phenomenal band. And so I really started digging into his music and like just playing guitar a lot more and kind of like, wow, this dude's really good on acoustic guitar. And then some of the stuff he does live, like I just like the improv. And you can tell like people like John, Dave, or Ed Sheeran or Tom Nish, like he's also really good at just jamming. Like they're up there just jamming, man. Like they're having the time of their life, and they're so secure in what they're doing. They know they're in the pocket.
Yeah. And
I think that at this point, at least in all those guys' careers, I'm sure there's people who are still up and coming. Once you get to a certain level, I think, like the give and take, like, that I'm here. I've done this for this long. People are still going to come see me, which means they're going to respect and they're going to roll with like the chances I take creatively or like on stage or whatever that may be. And I think the fact that they all know that is just the greatest thing.
Yeah.
Because I don't feel like anybody would ever go to a John Mayer concert like you or I. We would go just to be like, whatever happens, I'm all here for it, and it's going to be great. And it's like a Dead show. No shows are the same, and that's okay. And they're not supposed to be. I think a lot of people, and I talked to my brother about this. He's very much somebody who loves music, but like going to a concert to him, he's not there. He's just like, well, why would I go when I can just listen to it? I'm like, you got to go see it in person. You get it. Yeah. I don't want to do that. He's like, no, I'd rather just listen to it and have it be consistent. And there are people who are like that, who they like what they like. But I think the most people, if you went to any concert and then artists played, like, let's just say John, for example, let's just say he played No Such Thing the way it was written and recorded, and it's that amount of length. There's no solos. There's nothing like fun to like get you in there, and everything's basically just like you're hearing the album live, like not in a fun way. I think people will be like, this is cool, but I'd rather him go out and like make some changes or incorporate things. I got to see him once. He started playing Why Georgia, and halfway through he just started playing No Such Thing, and then went back to Why Georgia like nothing even happened. We're like, what the fuck just happened? And he was just up there all cheeky, like, yeah, I just if you're there, you're there for the ride. But I think, to answer your main question, I get distracted, but the further I get into music, and I've really been playing a lot of acoustic, like I haven't touched an electric guitar probably like a month, which is very weird for me. I started on electric, and I like electric for the fact that you're never going to break your neck. You can solo like you want, you can learn songs, you can play along to records. It's great. And acoustic will give you a different level of discipline. And I'm kind of late to the game. Like I'm really just starting to finally appreciate it. I'm like, oh, this is all I need. I grab my little acoustic head Sheehan guitar, take it with me if I go home. I take it if I'm like traveling someplace, not crazy, but like just because I want to have it, just to have something. And it's just something there. And I don't know about you, but I love playing like along with like my heroes, like my favorite records. And I'm never going to be that good, and that's okay. But that doesn't mean that I don't love it every second of the way. So I feel like watching people do it live and like taking risks and chances and changing it up makes me love it more. And I'm always like, well, if I ever do a gig, like how would I play this? Would I just play it like people know? I'm like, no, I'd probably shake it up a little bit. Just for the So I know I'm really into it. I'm deep into the music. So are you. I think it's why you and I get along so well.
Yeah.
And I'm loving it, man. I mean, I love everything that's going on right now with people we're into. It's great.
Yeah. And I think that's one of those things where I equivalate lots of things to stand-up comedy because it's one of the things I'm really passionate about as well. And when you see it, and then there's this big idea in stand-up about getting comfortable with your own voice and finding your own voice on stage and getting to that point. And then at that point, that's when you start to really, once you get confident enough, and some people can do this early, sometimes it takes people 15 years to get to that point. Some guys just really figure it out early on in their career. But as soon as that switch flips and you start to be yourself on stage, and instead of trying to do what you think the crowd wants to do, you just do what you enjoy and let them come along for the ride with you. It's a very different thing. And that's what starts to create real in-depth fans of what you are doing, because now you're tapping into something that is true to you. And now as you grow that, now the audience starts to change, where now instead of just going into a room where nobody knows you and you have to fight and claw to get them on your side, and to have that balance of that razor's edge balance of trying to be who you are, but not losing them. You're starting to have a crowd of people that's coming in, knowing who you are, knowing your comedy, knowing your style, and it gives you another round of freedom. Right. And I feel like it's interesting to see that with music. And I think there's so many people that just find something that they know works, and they're worried to do those off kilter, mixing it up a little bit. Like they know how to play the song, they know how to play it well, and they're going to do it every time. And they don't give themselves that creative freedom to explore a little bit, to make some mistakes. And I think that's what holds people back. And I think that's what really separates and allows for people like Ed Sheeran and John Mayer to get to that point is they always had that. They were always doing what they wanted to do. They were just so unique in that they started it so early and they didn't take all that time to figure out what that was. And I think that brings a level of freedom to their music eventually that is like nothing else you can manufacture, right? Like it's just that freedom to go off and solo for 10 minutes and just have that be okay, right? Like that no one's going to yell at you. No one's going to think anything different. People are going to love it. And just to have that confidence in yourself that as long as I'm enjoying it, as long as I'm having fun, everybody else is going to have fun. And that's so scary. It's so intuitive. It seems so easy. Like everyone should just understand that, but it's such a tough thing to really believe enough to make it happen, to manifest it into real life. And I hold such a high esteem for artists like John Mayer that can do that has that freedom, that has that, and not just the freedom, but the confidence to have that freedom, the confidence that underlies it, which is so funny to say because so many people, like if you followed John Mayer, like we have, there's this confidence, but there's a lot of insecurity with him too, right? And he's very open about that. And you can see it in his music, and it's fun to watch that balance of that, to know that, all that confidence and all that freedom that he has, that is also tied to a huge amount of insecurity and fear and anxiety and all that other stuff that just makes it feel good. It's like they're not some superhuman that doesn't feel those same things. They're feeling the same things too, but they've just worked through it and they've got to this point where they just have it honed like a razor sharp edge where they can just go and destroy venue after venue in a completely unique way. Oh, it's awesome. And I'm just lucky as a fan just to sit back and appreciate it all, because I know that's just not my destiny to be what they're doing, and it's just fun to watch people chase that passion like that. It's awesome, absolutely awesome.
But I feel like part of the reason that we love that, it's not disingenuous,
right?
It's very honest. It's very, and they're not up there because it's. I think it'd be very easy, I think, for Ed Sheeran or John Mayer, whoever we want to top pull out of a hat, to go on up there, play like greatest hits or start an album to finish and just phone it in and kind of be there and then be like, all right, see you later. Mm-hmm. There's a certain level of interaction with fans, like really appreciating it. And I think we're lucky because of John in 2009 versus John in 2021. The John we have now is, I think, very confident and comfortable with his fan base. And he's also like, so Room for Squares turned 20 years old last Saturday.
Wow. Which
makes me feel old. I'm 25 and I've been listening to that album since I was 5, which is just wild. But I read the post and he's like, I don't know if I'm the artist who celebrates birthdays, but I think this is an important one. Thank you so much for allowing me to do this 20 years later. Like, I promise I'll do it the rest of my life. Like, it really means a lot to me. I'm like, I think that's pretty cool. And you can tell that's honest.
Yeah.
2009, John Mayer would have been like, sweet, I made a bunch of money off, that song, but, what about this? And I think that guy, like we said, was just so misunderstood and so forced to be something he wasn't. And I think once he really almost canceled himself, to be honest, like once he really did that, moved out to Montana and was hiding in New York, basically just writing these folk country albums, which nobody understood. But at the time I was like, well, this is different. And I wasn't sold on it right away. I really had to sit with some of those songs, and now they are some of my absolute favorites.
Yeah.
And I think you earn that loyalty through honesty. If that makes sense. I mean, again, they could be up there just kind of ham and egging it. They could just be like, all right, here's A-Team, here's Don't, here's Sing. All right, I'll see you guys later.
Yeah.
And Ed Sheeran, I think, might be the best at it. He's very good at just like taking you in different directions. Like, and again, dude has a guitar and a looper pedal.
It's mind blowing.
And he kicks ass.
Anybody that says they're a fan of Ed Sheeran and they haven't, at the very least, watched live versions of his concert, like definitely go see him live. But that's a big ask. But if you really think you're a fan of Ed Sheeran, you have to watch him play these songs, right? Like it sounds great on an album. Everybody loves it. Like there's a reason he's the most popular pop star probably in the world right now, at least top 5, right? Like easily say that. There's a reason for that, but also, if you want to truly experience like that mastery over music, like I'm saying, you have to see how he puts it together and his understanding of all these pieces of the music, right? He's not just the guitar player. He's the bass. He's the garnish. He's everything. He's the backbone. And he creates it. And it all flows together beautifully, and it all speaks with his voice, right? And his voice in his guitar, right? Like we've talked, I think last podcast about, each guitarist has a voice to their guitar. You can hear a Jimi Hendrix song, right? Like you can hear Stevie Ray Vaughan in John Mayer. You can hear, like that tone of his. And I think that's what makes Ed Sheeran so special, is he has a very unique sound with it, but you won't fully appreciate it until you watch how the sausage is made and watches how he puts them all together. And then you get this extra layer into the behind the scenes of what that song means and how it came together. And I can't get enough of it. That was like before. I don't know if it's before I saw him live or after, but just going through the rabbit hole on YouTube of just watching video after video of him playing these songs, just different in different, radio halls and different things like this, of just watching him put it together, because I could watch him play literally the same song 50 different times and it would never be boring because of just how intricate it is and how in depth all the behind the scenes are and just how much I love that stuff. And the fact that I'm a pretty big fan of the guy myself, like that doesn't hurt. That doesn't hurt.
I will give you one song of John Mayer's and you will never find another like version like it. Neon. Every version is different and every version is so fucking good.
So
and
good.
Every time I'm like, how do you play that?
Yeah.
How are you just so percussive with the right hand technique and you're hitting these like notes almost like a bass, but you're voicing like the drum, like it's insane. And I got to see him do it once, solo acoustic, and it was everything. It was like, no, he didn't even need a looper pedal. He just was up there soloing and kind of taking his time with it, getting jazzy. And you could tell the fans were like, oh, this is cool. And then he just was like, all right. And then just went into it. And okay. Like,
I don't think he played Neon when he came to Edmonton last when I went and saw him. I was, and that's what he said. Like I remember thinking like, there's so many songs. I'm so happy I got to hear it, but I'm so sad I missed so many of these songs. But that's actually I think that's the song that made me start guitar. I think my cousin Chris.
We talked about this.
Because he said, "Have you ever heard Neon?" And I said, "Yeah, it's a great song, right? Like we're talking guitar, whatever." And I thought he meant there's a country song named Neon that was just another great tune. I can't remember even who sings at the time. He said, "No, Neon by John Mayer. Pull it up." And we're just at the computer, like our desktop computer at home enslaved because I don't know how old I was. And he pulled up Neon, and I just sat there with my jaw on the floor, just watching this guy do something with a guitar I had never seen. Right. And I wasn't even a real John Mayer fan at that time. He was always that, like I thought my mom John Mayer is kind of an old lady. It's old lady music, right? Like
talk about this. Yeah.
This isn't for me. But when I heard that song of Neon, like that is to this day my favorite song. And it's so funny how many different versions there are, because like when Neon comes on my phone, I'm going to sing along, but I'm not just going to sing along to the words. I'm going to make every guitar noise with my mouth the whole way through of every little lick and weird thing he does, right? But not just to one version, to every version. I have every version of my phone. So forever, anywhere, if you want to just see some wild thing and you see me in public, just start playing any version of Neon and you'll hear a really wild rendition come out of my mouth, because I know every beat to that song in every version he has released.
I mean, which is so crazy too. He's like, you hear the studio version Neon, and it was before he really started doing acoustic. You're like, oh, this is a cool song. Mm-hmm. And then there's Any Given Thursday, I think is the only one I've ever found where he's playing an electric guitar. He's playing like a Novak Expression, like a weird, it's the guitar that's on the records. Hold on. Yeah, he's playing.
Pulling out your vinyls?
Yeah, well, yeah, he's playing this.
Yeah.
And it's, it's cool, but like once he stripped it down to an acoustic, which is what it was originally recorded as, everyone went like, okay, yeah. Like I get that.
Yeah. That's where the magic was. Hey,
every version I've heard is completely different, but every single one will punch you in the face and leave you saying, how the fuck does this guy do it?
Yeah.
It's insane.
It is insane. And that kind of leads me to a question. I'm just seeing you pull out the vinyl. I'm curious. I don't think I asked you this last time. I'm curious about how you listen to music. Like, I'm sure you listen to music a bunch of different ways, right? Like for myself, I'm a car music guy. Sometimes running, I like some music, right? But if I'm if I want to enjoy like an album, like recently with this Tash Sultana, like I will put it on a loudspeaker. I like a little bit of weed, and I like to just sit there, album start to finish, and just take it in. And that is like my best way. If I have a preferred way of taking music, that's mine. But like, I've never tried, throwing on a vinyl. I've never tried this. Like, what is the breakdown? Like, what would you say is the most common way you'd listen to music, or maybe the most common ways you'd listen to music? But then what if you want to really experience an album and you want to take it in? What is your preferred way?
Okay. Yeah. Great question. So I don't even start my car until like I have music already queued up on my phone.
Yeah.
Like I have a charger in my car. It's like I have Apple Play.
Yeah.
Amazing. Thank you, Steve Jobs and everybody. It's the best thing. But I will either put my phone on shuffle. It depends on the mood. And like, again, I'm very not moody with music, but like sometimes I'll wake up and be like, I'm just feeling kind of funk chill today. I'm like, Tom Misch, put it on shuffle, we're just gonna ride it out.
Funk chill. That's a good way to put it. That's probably the description I would give. I like that. I like that. Funk chill.
Yeah. And then obviously, if you put my phone on shuffle, wait like 10 or 15 minutes, you're gonna hear a John Mayer song. I have so many. And so I drive a lot in the car a lot. I travel back home to Michigan. Sometimes I go to Columbus, Ohio, which is like 2 hours away. I go to Michigan, hour and a half. So I listen to a lot of music in the car. I have various headphones. If I can like sit down, if I'm traveling somewhere and I have time, I will put some headphones on. If I'm walking around, like when I was going to school, I'd walk to camp, like class or campus, always had headphones in.
Yeah.
I pretty much always have music around whatever I'm doing. If I have the time, which means if I'm home where I am right now and nothing's going on and I'm like really in a mood, I'm like, I want to hear sob rock start to finish on a record player. I acquired, I think that's the word. My dad had these old Bose speakers from like the 80s. He was going to get rid of them. I was like, I'll take those. And I have this old like receiver for it. Thing's awesome. I never have to crank it up that loud. It's in good shape. So I have an Audio Technica LP60. I think that's the record player I have. I got it at Barnes & Noble. Nothing crazy, but I have it hooked up to these really decent speakers, and I'll just put a record on, like lay down on my bed, or I'll just sit in a chair and like just hang out.
Yeah.
And records themselves are, how do I say this? I think they're awesome. I mean, I love them. For me, it's cool. I like holding that, we live in a streaming world, and it sounds so hipster douche. Like, you got to hold the music, man. But there is something about that. Some albums I have come with really cool artwork. Some come with like personalized autographs. I have an autographed Tom Misch record, which is sweet.
That's cool.
Yeah. But I like kind of having that. It's like the tangible things. Like, this is how music was, and we progressed into a world of streaming, and it's kind of nice to go back to that every now and then. I don't do it all the time, but lately I've been doing that. I've been playing Dave Matthews' first record a lot lately, Under the Table and Dreaming. I got that on vinyl, and I've just been loving that.
Yeah.
Soft Rock, got that on vinyl. I'm a fan of that. And record players are by no means necessarily convenient. Like, you have to put the record on, wait 4 or 5 songs, flip it over, hit the needle down again. But there's something about that I'm like, I just feel so deep into what I'm doing. I don't have other distractions. Maybe I'll be checking my phone occasionally, but if I'm putting a record on, I'm pretty much zoned in.
Yeah.
And when I was in school and I was doing a lot of homework or whatever, or lesson planning for teaching and stuff, what have you, records were like my best friend. I put a record on, and there's a certain like discipline with a record. Like, you can skip songs, but it's more of a hassle than it's worth.
Yeah.
And I think it definitely changed the way I listen to music. I used to kind of cherry pick when I would stream songs. I'd be like, okay, I like this song from this record. I like this song and this album or whatever. And you'd have like 3 or 4 songs. I'd have like track 2, 7, 5, like not like all over the place. And then I remember just like, start listening to records, and I'd be in record shops with friends. I'm like, oh, okay, well, I really love like these 4 songs. I don't know these 2. And that one I've never heard before. Like, you're just kind of taking the gamble. So you put that on, and I have found songs that way that I don't think I ever would have found if I didn't have, I guess, the discipline to just put a record on start to finish. And there's something about doing that too, where you put it start to finish, no interruptions. You hear the whole thing, and I'm like, oh, this is how it was intended to be listened to. At least that's my interpretation.
Yeah.
And I remember when Search for Everything came out, the way music was really stream. I mean, it's always gonna be stream heavy, I think. But at that time, you had Drake or you had Taylor Swift. You had all these artists, like huge artists. They were just dropping songs kind of randomly. And then you were getting like half the album, and then you were getting the whole album. And I remember that John Mayer did that. And because we had waves. So wave 1 was Love on the Weekend, Moving On, Getting Over, Changing, and You're Gonna Live Forever in Me. So that's 4 songs. And he had wave 2, and then wave 3 was like the rest of the album, which is cool. And I liked kind of having that. The way he did it was every month you're gonna get 4 songs.
Yeah.
And I have researched the hell out of this, because I remember him being in the studio for a long time with that record, like years. I think he was working on it for 3.5 to 4 years. It might have even been like 5. It's crazy. There was a big gap between Paradise Valley and Search for Everything. I think it was 4 years, I believe. And I remember seeing Instagram posts. He's like, Search for Everything's never done. It's done when I say it's done. And he's like, I'm keep launching wave after wave. I'm like, we're going to get like a 2-part album or something. I was thinking kind of like Justin Timberlake 2020 experience back in like late 2000s or early 2012. Yeah. Where he put the first one out and it was like 15 songs. Awesome. Then he waited like a year or two, got part 2, and it was just awesome.
Mm-hmm.
So I was hopeful that we would get a lot of these songs, Search for Everything. And John, I think he realized that how he likes to make music or how he wanted to put music out, he was just going with the trends. And he was like, I'm putting 4 songs out. We're going to wait a month, put another 4 songs out. We're going to wait a month. And then I'm going to give you the rest of the record, 4 songs, and then you're good.
Mm-hmm.
And I think it's, let's see, is it 12 songs? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Yeah, 12 songs. 12 songs on a record. It's pretty standard. But I think the nice thing about it, concert-wise, once you show up to a concert, you already knew the songs. Like you had already had them for a few months before the tour started.
Yeah.
And I remember seeing him 2 days before Search for Everything, before the final thing launched. That would have been August or April 14th. I think April 14th. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know why I know these things.
Yeah.
But part of me was super happy about that. But also I was like, I would have loved to have heard, Rosie and some other songs that
that's a good tune.
people I know got to see.
Yeah.
So, and I think he realized that. He's like, okay, I didn't make a miscalculation, but the way music is going and the way streaming works, I think he was on an interview with Ellen or somebody. He's like, it's a lot to ask somebody to just sit down and dedicate an hour or so of their life now to just 12 songs.
Mm-hmm.
Like, so let me just put out 4, and then you're going to learn to love those 4, and I'll put out another 4. You're going to learn to love those 4, and here we go.
Yeah.
And I remember him talking about Sob Rock before, we really knew what it was going to be. He was like, I want to just bank songs. I think the Dean Del Rey interview when he's like, at the end, he's like, what are you doing? Anything to play? He's like, no, I'm going to bank some songs. I'm going to go back to how I used to do it. I'm going to bank some songs. And I'm going to put a record out, which he did. And I also think Sob Rock was kind of a hybrid. Like we got a few of the songs super early, which I'm sure we're going to get into, but how I think that changed. I think that definitely changed how I listened to some of his stuff at first. Cause I was like, oh, well, these songs kind of came out. And by that point it's like, we're basically drug addicts. If you're a John Mayer fan, you're a drug addict in the sense that you are always waiting for the next thing. And that's not to say that like, you get bored easily. You don't. You just beat the hell out of these songs. And like when Sob Rock came out, I remember listening to it at midnight, just hours. I think it's like 2 hours and just put this thing on a loop. And I was like, I need to go to sleep. Other than that, I'm going to keep listening to this. And I think that's true with Search for Everything. But there had been a long time. It had been 2017, 18, 19, 20, 4 years. So we waited 4 years for another, album. And of that album, we got a few of the songs had already been released.
Mm-hmm.
And I think he talked about it. Like, so like New Light came out in 2018, I'm pretty sure.
Yeah.
I guess I just feel like shortly after that, maybe the next year, and then Carry Me Away. So we had those 3 that we were working with.
Yeah.
It was like, okay, it was scratching the itch almost. You're like, okay, well, I'm getting songs. And then I just beat the hell out of them. Again, you get the song, beat the hell out of it, and then put John Mayer on shuffle, listen to all the other ones. And then a year later, new song, beat the hell out of it, And I will say, initially, my first playthrough of Sob Rock, I kind of I didn't do this, but I kind of wanted to, because I knew, I was like, 4 of the songs on this record, I have already heard back and forth, or so I thought. And I was like, I've heard these songs so many times. Well, he redid some of the drums on Carry Me Away, and I think he tweaked, I guess I just feel like slightly, which was kind of cool. But like my initial thought was, you've heard these 4 songs so many times. Just play the songs you haven't heard yet. I was like, no, play it all the way through. And then you
play it like it was intended.
Play it like it was intended, and then kind of cherry pick the way you do it. So I'm going on tangents today. But
no, that's good. That's good. I love to hear it. I could talk about John Mayer for literally days at a time. So no worries on my end.
Same. Yeah. But so my first response was kind of like, okay, we're going to play it all the way through, and then we're going to do it again. And then after that, if you're comfortable, I'm like, focus on a song that you really like. But I just think it's changing how we listen to music. When songs get launched, like I said, your first instinct is, I'm going to listen to the shit out of that. And you do. And I remember when Carry Me Away came out, and I was in class. I was in like a education class, and I found it leaked. I think Nick had either sent it to me or I was talking to him. I might have sent it to you. I was like, dude, here we go. We got it. I was just in class, just like jamming out. And people were it was a lecture hall. It was like 300 people. So I didn't matter. I mean, I ain't in the class. Not the point. but I was lost in that world for a while. And then after a month or so, you're like, okay. And it's not necessarily like a burnout, but you do kind of get burnt out a little bit. Like you play it over and over. And I don't think there's anything wrong with that. And I'll admit to it, with any music I've heard, if it's a record I'm really into, really in love with, I beat the hell out of it.
Same here.
And then I kind of think, okay, this is how you feel right now. And it's never like I never lose love for it. I just think you spent a lot of time on this record. Let's see what you've missed since this came out. And then you go find something else. So I'm always trying to play catch up, but I would say I'm also awful at it because I am very set in my ways of what I like musically.
Right.
And I'm all about taking risks and exploring things. And I love finding new music.
Mm-hmm.
I love when people send me new music. I'm like, oh, sweet, let's go.
Yeah.
But if I really have to search for it, and I gotta say, we talked about this last time, like a lot of new music today just doesn't really excite me.
Mm-hmm.
That's not like I'm too, back in my day, music was music. It's none of that shit. Everyone's always like, you just need to, stop listening to old shit. That's what people tell me. They're like, you listen to such old music. I'm like, early 2000s is really old. They're like, yeah. I'm like, that's not old. I'm like, let's go back to some 40s swing music I fuck with. My grandpa loved it, and I love that about him. And let's go to some 60s Hendrix stuff because I got into the Dead, and then you find that. I think you can always find things that you love, and I feel like I'm just always playing catch up.
Yeah, yeah.
So, your question, how do I listen to music? I don't know. I'm all over the place.
You listen to a lot of music in a lot of different ways. It sounds like
a lot of music different ways.
Maybe I can throw a different question at you, just because I'm sure we're going to talk content-wise about Sob Rock, but before we get to that, I'm curious just about kind of what you were talking about, let's say, what was it before Search for Everything? It was Paradise Valley?
Yeah, Paradise Valley.
So Paradise Valley came out. That was just a full album. It dropped. I don't think, was there singles released before that one, or was that?
Yeah, we had Wildfire, maybe. Right. I mean, that's a single. I think the real single was Paper Doll because the music video is like girls like prancing. So random, and you're like, this is the John Mayer.
So maybe that we'll use that as kind of control because that's like it's the most in recent John Mayer history. That's the most typical release schedule. Then you have Search for Everything with the 4, 4, and 4.
Right.
Then you have the kind of the wave style. Then you had Sob Rock, where it was kind of a slow drip of singles over multiple years. And then a wave of the rest of the album.
Yeah.
Content aside, like the actual how good the albums are and the songs within them, that aside, just the release, how did you handle those? What did you prefer? Do you like it the old way? Did you kind of like the new experimentation? And just maybe before you give your idea on that, I think what's changing it so much is streaming. I think what we saw with just Drake's release and Kanye's release of apparently you make more by having the length really matters. So there's 27 songs on these damn albums. I'm glad that John Mayer didn't go that way, but it's tough for me to watch an artistic endeavor like putting music together be impacted by things like algorithms and streaming, because that shouldn't matter. It should be like guys like John Mayer just saying, I'm going to release this in the best way for the music quality and how it does. And I think John Mayer is that type of guy, but it's sad to see guys on the level of Drake and Kanye just not like, what could those albums have been if they would have not taken that piece of to heart and just put out what they wanted or what they felt. And I'm curious about that too. Right.
Yeah, good question. So I know, and I'm sure you've seen this, the Zane Lowe. Is that who the guy, Apple Music guy who does stuff? Zane Lowe. But he did a Sob Rock interview with John Mayer. He was like, how do you feel about this? And John flat out said, Search for Everything suffered. It suffered because I spent too much time on it, but also was like, I spent like years on that record. I'd go into the studio with an idea and I'd be like, okay, we're good. And then I'd put it down and then I'd come in, week or two later with a different idea. And I'd really focus on that. She's like, so the songs that aren't on that record, like there's so many that were like almost there that I just kind of talked myself out of, or, I just had so much. I was like, and it sucked for him when he was like, I had half of it done. I went and toured with the Dead and Company. I come back, I scrapped that half because I had a lot of time to think about it. I started working on other stuff. I scrapped that. And it was just so much time in between. I think that he was almost rushed to finish it. And he even said when he launched the wave, he's like, I'm doing it in waves because not everything's done yet. So I think at the time it was one of those things where I'm like, I can get on board with this because it's been, it had been the longest since he had put a record out.
Mm-hmm.
And, oh, no, well, 9, 10, 11, 12. Yeah, no, it had been the longest yet. It had been 4 years. I think Sob Rock and that are pretty much tied for like a 4-year mark. So, like I said, I'm like, we're just excited. I was just excited just to have
for new mayor.
For new mayor, right? And so the Wave thing, there was no say in the matter. Which again, I think he was trying to kind of compete and fit in with how streaming was working.
Mm-hmm.
But I remember him talking to Zayn on it. He's like, I couldn't do that again. It suffered because I kept changing things. And he's like, there are versions of certain songs that made the records. He's like that, no one's ever going to hear. And I still think about like what that could have been.
Yeah.
And so when I hear that as a fan, I'm like, fuck, like there's probably other songs that, and I know for sure there are songs that did not make that record. They're not on Sob Rock. I don't know where they are.
Mm-hmm.
They're somewhere in his brain. And they were probably 95% there. And John was all about it. And then he took some time away and then he just kept changing shit.
Yeah.
So when I found out how Sob Rock was going to go, that was my first kind of concern. I was like, okay, he spent 4 years. And my dad loves giving me jokes. He's like, it's been a long time. You're never going to get new music. I'm like, shut up. Like, I will get new music. I believe with Christ, all things are possible. Okay? Yeah. Or whatever you want to say. But so when I saw that, it was kind of out of nowhere, really. I mean, we had always been like, where's new music coming? And he had stopped doing Current Mood. He's like, I think my fans would rather have a new record. And I'm like, yes, we would. We'd like to have something new. And not that we don't love Current Mood or whatever he does, but I was all for it. So when the track listing of Sob Rock came out and I saw New Light, I guess it just feel like, and Carry Me Away, part of me kind of did like ooh.
I had the exact same feeling. I was thinking that. And
it wasn't bad. I was part of so the vinyl nut in me is like, sweet, I finally have New Light on vinyl. Yeah. Because that's not like a thing. And none of those were all just singles. I'm like, this has to go on a record someday.
Yeah.
And I wanted that. So I was happy about that. But I almost, in a way, and I think a lot of Mayer fans, I know we're in that same Facebook John Mayer group, like John Mayer knows best or whatever.
Yeah.
I know that people felt cheated. And that was really the metric. I kept checking that thing daily, like hourly, and everyone just was like, well, we already got 3 of his songs. And by the time that the whole track list came out.
And I think a piece of that too, and I was hoping we get to this when we talk about the content of it, I think the 3 songs that it was very impactful too. And then when we get there, I'll kind of give more reason, but I don't think it's just the fact that it was, we already had 3 songs off this album. I think it was those specific 3 songs in the grand scheme of that album, I think had a very big impact of already knowing those 3 songs.
Oh, I 100% agree. And I think by the time we knew the official track list, Last Train Home had come out, which was great. I was like, this is, and he was teasing things on TikTok or what have you. So we had an idea what the record was going to be. We didn't know what these songs were. We didn't know where they were going to fall or what songs were going to be. I remember reading the track listing and seeing some of the songs like Wild Blue. That sounds kind of cool. Shouldn't Matter, But It Does. And I was like, that sounds like it's going to be deep and punch me in the face, which it did. And then I remember seeing Why You Know Love Me.
Why You Know Love Me. That is the same thing with that group. Like of when I checked the group and stuff of what people were saying, everyone was just pissed. People hated that song, Why You Know Love Me. And
they hated the phonetics. They were going through. Yeah. That was, and everyone's like, what the hell is Why You Know, this sounds childish. And
Zayn, why are you talking like a baby, right? Like,
Zayn was even like in the interview, he's like, why don't you love me? And he's like, that could have worked. And John's like, no, I don't think it could have. And he's like, walk me through it. He's like, Why You Know Love Me is the child in you. It's like the most innocent part of you that's left.
Yeah.
And you've done everything. It's like, you don't even have the words. You're just like, when you're a kid and you're frustrated, you're like, why you know love me? Like, why you know what?
Yeah.
And I remember him talking about it and thinking like, I feel like I'm going to love this song. I don't know why, but I just was like, every time he does something kind of like that, where you're like, what is this title? Or like, like Emoji of a Wave.
Yeah.
Who names a song Emoji of a Wave?
Yeah.
And you see that. And when I explained to like my mom and we were at the concert, she's like, what is it? I'm like, this is Emoji of a Wave. She's like, what the fuck is that title? And I was like, I'll text it to you. And then she's like the wave thing? I'm like, yeah. And, trying to look at some things like that. And you're like, what the hell, John? And then you hear it. You hear Emoji of a Wave. And the first time I remember hearing that and be like, oh my God. Whoa. I was in Jacksonville, Florida, visiting my mom for spring break when Wave 2 came out. And I'd say it's probably the only time I literally could not stop listening to a song was Still Feel Like Your Man.
Oh,
That's still one of those songs I play religiously during the week. I
such a
remember
good song.
when Wave 2 came out, and that's the first thing I heard, I was like, repeat. An entire plane ride, Nick, an entire flight down there. I just was like, still feeling like a man, just jamming.
That
That's
line about leaving the shampoo in my shower
oh,
is the best line in music for my money. Like it is so, so, so impactful. Like it just
oh my God. It
shreds you.
it breaks me.
Yeah.
Every time I hear that, it's I still keep your shampoo in your shower just in case you want to wash your hair. And I know that you probably found some more somewhere, but I still don't really care. It's like,
Yeah.
oh, that is so tough and so honest. And I'm like,
Yeah.
it's not him just being like, I could write something kind of clever. It's this is me working through shit.
Yeah.
This is me and Katy Perry. We're done. And like, I'm still there, man. And having to watch her go be with Orlando Bloom and like have a baby, like, I think it fucked him up a bit. And him talking about, like in Sob Rock, especially, shouldn't matter, but it does. We could have been busy naming baby number 3. And you're like,
yeah.
Like, there's so many things he does like that. But okay, we'll go back to it.
And it's so honest in this, like a lot of his music is honest. I'd say, like that is one of the key factors that makes it so good. But it's easy to be honest about cool things. But when it's that embarrassing, those things you would never want to admit to your best friend, of like those thoughts of like still feel like your man, and some of the things on Sob Rock. But to be honest, in those moments that don't show you in the best light and show you that show your insecurities, right? And to really bring that to the forefront. That's what I love about it, is like, it's easy to be honest about, if you're some rock band and you're talking about the honesty of touring and getting all these girls and all that, that's easy to be honest about that stuff. But to be honest about the deepest, darkest parts of the most painful shit that you're going through, and to be able to bring that honesty through to the point where it's conveyed in such a way that when you hear it, like you do with those couple lines we just spoke about, it just hits you in that deep, deep spot where you just feel like that gut punch. It's like, wow, that is talent. That is talent, and that is bravery to be able to put that together and put that out. Oh,
it's so good. And so I know we need to go like track by track on top.
Yeah.
And we will. But so I mean, like you said, when those 3 songs, when you see the record and you're like, I already have lived with these songs. They're friends of mine. I know them inside and out. And here's, these other ones I've never heard. But
yeah,
okay. And then Last Train Home, by the time the album came out, it's like, now I know that one too. So it's I think it's only 10 songs on the record. I'm pretty sure.
Rock. I'm just pulling it up now. There's 10 songs.
So, okay. You have 10 songs, right? 4 of them you already really know.
Yeah.
And so then you're kind of not upset, but I remember the Facebook group was fucking livid. And to anybody out there who hears this, John Mayer doesn't know you anything.
Yeah.
He doesn't know me anything. He doesn't know Nick. He doesn't owe us anything. He's doing this because he loves us or he loves music, and he hopes you dig it. And I think that was tough for me to watch because the group was just like militant. They're like, this is dumb. This is bullshit. Like, I feel robbed. We waited 4 years for basically 6 new songs. And I was kind of like, oh, okay, well, if that's how you want to look at it, you can look at it that way.
Yeah.
I chose not to look at it that way. I said, okay, look, let's just say that you took away New Light and you took away those other songs. People be pissed because New Light's a tuner. It's an absolute.
Yeah.
And when he plays it live, everyone's dancing. You're having a good time. I guess I just feel like when that came out was very appropriate to what was going on in the United States. I think Trump, there was a lot of like political things, and he was just like, I guess I just feel like, and you're like, and Andy Cohen was like, this is kind of a protest song. He's like, in a way, yeah, but it's really just me being honest of, I guess this is just where I'm at and where we're all at.
Yeah.
And everybody loved that. And then you get Carry Me Away, which came out of nowhere, and everybody loved that too. So I think it's stupid that people get upset when they're like, well, we already knew these 4 songs. I'm like, yeah, and you love them. And you're still going to fucking love him on this record. And you're going to pick up 6 of his best new friends. It's going to be okay.
Right. And I think that's where I was going to. I think because of the fact that Sob Rock, well, with every album of John Mayer's, it's a big departure from anything he's done before. He never does the same thing twice, really, right? So you're always going to have that. But on each album, there's something that harkens back to past music that is a little bit of old Mayer, just to ease you into the new stuff, right? And I feel like the breakdown of Sob Rock was the 4 songs that came out before were the 4 closest to old Mayer, so that usually those pieces of walking you in and feeding you into the new stuff of softening the blow of, hey, you're going to try this out. You're going to like it too eventually. Like, I know you're going to be upset at the start, but you're going to get there because we already had that before. I think, like myself, because I had them downloaded when I just downloaded the album, it did in the release order of my phone, New Light and all that are downloaded way below when I downloaded them. So it was just the brand new songs. When you listen to it without the old songs, it's a very like Sob Rock, that theme of that kind of 90s synth is way heavier without those songs, I would argue.
Oh yeah.
And it's really more, it's more concentrated Sob Rock, right? Like it takes it out of a little bit what that is. And I think that's what was so hard for people, because I think when people just listen through for the new stuff, it's very jarring because it's all very different. And you don't have any of those old hits, or the old hits that are usually function as that in John Mayer's songs.
Yeah.
We'd already heard, or some like myself weren't even in there, like, because they're just out of a different listening order. And I think that was what made it a little bit harder. And I think all that's going to do is just take people a little bit longer to love them. I think because usually you get those, and that's kind of that transitionary period where on your first listen, you're enjoying those kind of old ones. And then you give the new ones a bit more of a try every time you listen through and you pick those up again. I think that's had a big impact on it too. And that was what I was seeing. And to me, I don't know, I saw that too. And I feel like with a lot of things, but especially music, I really don't care about critics or criticism.
No, same.
Right? Like, I feel like with movies as of late, like almost to a T, if the critics hate it, it's probably a half decent movie. If the critics love it, it's probably a piece of shit, right? Like, it seems like that's the way it's gone, right?
I just watched this movie with my friend the other day, Moonstruck. It was Cher and Nicolas Cage. Watch it. It will blow your mind. It is the worst thing I've ever seen. It won like several Oscars. And I was literally like looking at the back. I'm like, how did this win Oscars?
Yeah.
Like, I don't understand it. And critics don't know what they're talking about. And at the end of the day, how do you feel about it? And I know how I feel about Sob Rock. I fucking love it.
You love it.
I absolutely love it. And I think what's important too, and I love that you brought this up, the songs that were put on that record were extremely purposeful. I think you nailed it. Like, all those songs, like New Light. Okay, if we're looking at this, the songs that were, I'm not going to include Last Train Home because that's very Sob Rock, but also like it fit. You could put it somewhere else. So
yeah,
New Light. If I had to put it somewhere, I would have put it as track 13 on Search for Everything. It was the final thing. I mean, it fits perfectly on Sob Rock, but like if I had to put it someplace else, because it came out right after Search for Everything.
Yeah,
and everyone was like, "Oh, this is fun. Why didn't this?" He's like, "You know, I just
it seemed like it very well could have fit into that.
It could have fit on that." Then you have, I guess I just feel like that is Born and Raised or Paradise Valley. It can fit. Yeah. It's probably more Born and Raised, I think.
That's what I'd say.
Yeah, and I think it's just very, very like acoustic, honest driven kind of, and that whole album is very like reflective. I love it. And then you have Carry Me Away. Another one I would have thrown on Search for Everything. And I don't think it's really a coincidence that those songs came out closely after that record. I think he was still kind of in that headspace of very like pop, but like kind of fun and whatever. But those songs definitely fit on Sob Rock and they have a place there. And I think that they definitely were very inviting, right? Because, you're going into 6 new songs, which, okay, if you're a diehard Mayer fan like you and I are like, sweet, bring it on. I'm already going to
Yeah. I don't care what genre it is. I don't care what type is it. They're going to be John, and that's all we want.
Yeah. We've seen him do so much and we've loved all of it. We're like, you can just do whatever you want at this point. And I think he knows that too. Also, the thing that I was really attracted to about the record was hearing him talk about it. So the record was really ironed out and made in the course of 7 months during the pandemic. I mean, he had these songs, but he really flushed them out. And like with Don Was at his house, they were doing COVID. They were going to the studio, like very rarely, but like they would go in and record stuff and then someone else would go in. And it seemed very genuine. And John was, like the world we're living in right now is crazy. And when I think of things that make me feel good, I think of feel good music. Well, what is some of the best music that makes me feel happy is 80s music, which I know is 80s music's fun. You got Michael Jackson. You have a lot of fun pop, just you get Clapton stuff. There's just so much to choose from. And that color is deniably 80s. And when you hear Sob Rock, you're like, oh, this feels 80s. And John has talked about, he's like, I wanted to make a record that felt like it was made in 1980, whatever, in like California kind of thing, or pop rock, and shelved for like 40 years. And someone just discovered it. They're like, oh, here's this Dusty record we just found. No one ever heard it. They put it out and like, oh, it's amazing. And so I think there's a sense of familiarity, excuse me, to that vibe. Because you can hear Sob Rock, you're like, I'm getting a little bit of Prince vibes here. These drums are very, Duran Duran or whatever. You just start pulling things that you already know. Yeah. And if you're deep into music like you and I are, it's going to come very quickly. You're going to be like, oh, this sounds like this. This sounds like this. And you're just kind of smiling. You're like, this is very cool. You're making some connections. I mean, Last Train Home is super Clapton. That's like journeyman Clapton. It's awesome. It reminds me of it's in the way that you use it. That's a Clapton tune. Yeah. But like,
I never made that connection before in my head. I'm going to have to re-listen to it now.
Yeah. But even like the artwork on it too is very 80s Clapton and all these things. And I felt like it was something John really wanted to do. And I remember him saying, like, if you don't like this record, that's okay. Because I'm going to make a lot more. Yeah. This is where I'm at right now. And this is what I wanted to put out. And it felt like the first time, I think in a little while, that John was like, not like a passion project. It felt like you made a really dedicated mixtape with your best friends. And you said, here it is. If we could make something fun that you never saw coming, here's Sob Rock. Yeah. And again, I think those 3 songs, well, 4 really with Last Train Home, but by that point, I think people had kind of were like, all right, let's see what it's going to be. But the 3 songs that we already knew going in were very familiar, like in that flavor of Mayer. You had acoustic stuff with, I guess, Just Feel Like. You had the upbeat, fun kind of, New Light and Carry Me Away, which I would have put on Search for Everything. It all felt familiar enough to reel you in. You're like, this is going to be comfortable. So I think you have a good point with that. But if we go through track for track, I mean, I think
that's the next step is to go through track for track. And I think that mirrors what we were talking about on the last episode of the way I look at John Mayer is he had all this. He was like a supernova of musical ability, and that's great. But the way music works is it's not a meritocracy. It's not the best gets to put out what they want. You have to earn your rights. You need to earn trust with these who puts out the music, the companies, not the albums, the studios. You need to build up trust with the studio. Yes. You need to earn your stripes to be able to do what you want. And it seems like when you look at the albums that came out at the start, none of it was disingenuous. It was, okay, you want a pop star? This is John Mayer's pop version. You want this? This is John Mayer's this. And it was kind of, okay, like now I've put out every album you guys want to see out of me. And more on the back half of his career, it's, no, this is what I want to put out. It's always going to be John Mayer, but it's not going to be you telling me what genre I'm about to tackle next. I'm about to tackle. Nobody in the world was telling any artist in this day and age to do an 80s sob rock album, right? But that's what he wanted to do. That's the album he wanted to put out, and it's always going to have his flavor. But you just see more and more as these go on and now he's probably got that. He's probably always wanted to do that album since he was a kid, right? Like that might have been what he pitched for his second album, but they just said like, well, we're not even taking that. We need some more of that Room for Square shit, right?
He's like, how's that? Daughters, it's a little song I wrote. They're like, yes. He's like, fuck, I don't want to be the sensitive guy. And then we get Continuum, and the rest is fucking history. But I think he did say that. He was like, I've always wanted to like do this, and there's no better time to do it now. It's like just be comfortable what you're doing, and he nailed it. Yeah, I have nothing wrong with this record, and I love it. I listen to it all the time. And part of that too, I think, is because it's been 4 years since we had some like really concrete like a record. Yeah. So I'm gonna beat the hell out of this one again. I'll just like Search for Everything. Like I destroyed that. Like I put that into the ground, buried it, unburied it, high-fived it, buried it some more. Like I just played it so much, but I never get tired of Still Feel Like a Man. I never skip Rosie. I never stop singing to Moving On and Getting Over. Yeah. And you don't lose any of that. And I think that's really like, and that's great. And Sob Rock's the same way. I love every song on that record. Starting with Last Train Home.
Last Train Home. So that was one of the ones that we got. Was that the latest one released right before, or was that the second? Yeah. So that one we didn't have that one. That was the song that released, I think, a couple days after our first episode.
Right.
We were leading up to that. Yeah, we were talking about that one coming out. So that was, like we said, that one is great tune, very familiar, very, very Mayer feels. Great. I don't know. I feel like my favorite part was trying to learn that song on guitar after, and just the different rhythm. I feel like I didn't fully appreciate that song until I tried to play it, of just the chord switches, like with I feel like this is going to be really confusing to somebody that maybe doesn't play guitar or doesn't understand music, but just
listen to the last podcast. We got you.
Yeah, like the way the chord transitions and almost like hit. Like I can't even explain. I have this thing inside myself. I can't even explain it to you right now of just the rhythm, I guess. The rhythm of the chords in time with the rhythm of the words just feels something different. And for some reason, listening to it, it didn't hit me this way until I started playing with it. And just almost like when you're playing along with it, it's moving you of like just like the quick jumps between the chords and just the switch back and forth. Like once you realize that underlayer of that, it makes the whole song come together. And I feel like I didn't fully appreciate it until I took a whack at playing it. But that's honestly one of my favorite songs to mess around with off that new album. What did you think of Last Train Home?
I mean, right away I was like, okay, like it had everything you want, and it's a short song. Like let's see the runtime real quick. I'm gonna pull it up real quick. It's not long, which that's okay. It doesn't need to be. It's your introduction to the record.
3 minutes.
3 minutes. Mm-hmm. And I think having Maren Morris doing background, like the closing, like the outro, is an awesome touch. She's got some pipes. She can sing.
I didn't even know that.
Yeah, that's her singing like on the outro. She's just singing things, and it just won MTV or VMA's like music video of the year.
Oh, really?
Like pop rock or something. Yeah,
I don't know the last time I've watched a music video, if I'm honest with you. Like I couldn't even tell you.
It's a good music. I mean, it's fun, it's colorful, it's 80s vibes.
Yeah.
So right off the bat, and I was like, okay, I'm gonna watch the music video, listen to it. I'm gonna listen to the song. Like I was already there, and I kept hearing it on the radio.
Yeah.
Everywhere I went, I'm like, this is a hit. Whether people will acknowledge that or say that, like, and the album went to Billboard #1 or like Rolling Stones #1 for a little while. Like he was like, this album crushed it.
Yeah.
So right off the bat, I'm like, this is sweet. This is different from the songs we already had.
Mm-hmm.
It was, I think it set the tone for the record. You were like, this is going to be, kind of synth, drummy, heavy reverb on a guitar. And it's going to have, I mean, the lyrics, again, they're not overly complex. Like the melody, the way it works, it's just so good. It's easy. And it's not asking a lot. I think that's how I'd phrase it. It's not asking a lot of you to jump on board with it. You're like, okay, I can go with this. And you just, when you start playing it, because I tried it too, I'm like, oh my God, like there's a lot going on there. Some of those chord changes are quick. Some of them are tricky, but you love it.
And I'm really struggling with this with this explanation because it's more than it's quick, but it's also like bitey. Like like it's such a like the actual the tones of the chords that you're switching between are so like it's such a sharp change, and you're only hitting like for like one beat of each one, and there's so much difference between the two of just like it's almost like getting knocked around. Like it's over here, then it's over here, then it's back over here, but it's a melody. So it's like it's kicking your ass, but to a melody. And I love that. And I didn't appreciate that until I started playing it, and just like how meaty that is, and just to get into that rhythm. And really, once I had that, then it really hits me. And every time I hear that song now, I really get it hooks deeper inside and really throws you around. And I love that of it. And it's just a good song, like you say, that's digestible. It's not super wonky, super way out there like some of these songs will, right? Like maybe like Why You Know Love Me, that it's a little bit of, it's a great song too, don't get me wrong, but it's a little bit out there, right? It's great, gets you in. And what I like is that it's Last Train Home, Shouldn't Matter But It Does, then New Light. So you got Last Train Home and New Light, which are both, we'll get to them, but to sandwich like Shouldn't Matter But It Does is maybe the most emotional song, and that's what we'll get to next. Is it's number 2, and it's sandwiched between these two amazing bops of like
upbeat, happy,
upbeat, happy, really, really digestible. Like you don't need to be a diehard Mare fan. Like that just comes on the radio. It's gonna bring in the casual audience, right? Like in MMA when a Conor McGregor fights, right? You're not just having the diehards, you're having all the casuals come in. That's like,
it's lighthearted, and you're like, this is kind of fun. It's a little bit of fun. Shouldn't matter, but it does.
Yeah. So what were your first thoughts on that? Because that's probably one of my top songs from the album. Is Shouldn't Matter, But It Does.
Yeah. I immediately was like, I need to figure out how to play some guitar.
Yeah.
And for me, and I instantly I was like, I got to figure this out. But also, that song is so brutal. And
brutal. Hey,
I heard him talk. He's like, it's the most brutal and honest song I've ever written, and that shows. And it really, I mean, it got me thinking too. It's like, okay, John is 42, I think. He's not married. He doesn't have any children, but he's John Mayer and he's super successful. this song felt like a giant, like, I'm John Mayer, and I have all these things, but I don't have you, and it shouldn't matter, but it does.
But it does.
It does matter that, like, we could have done this. We could have been busy naming baby number 3. I know it's over. I'm just saying this was just because it shouldn't matter, but it does.
Yeah.
Listen to that, and I'm like, huh. And I don't know about you, and I don't try to do this a lot. Sometimes this happens to me. I will hear some of these songs, I'm just like, and I think back on past relationships. I think back on some things that didn't work out. And I'm like, that's whatever, I'm in a good place. But I think back, I'm like, wow, like, this is him really being honest with himself and being like, if a couple things had shaken out differently, I could probably be here, but I'm not. And that's okay.
Yeah.
It shouldn't matter to me, but it does, because I'm not there. And I think about it. And it just is like, God, like, you get what he's feeling. And you walk away from that song, you're like, whew, okay, I need some tissues. I need to hang out. And then New Light comes on. You're like, fuck, what is going on?
Put the tissues away. I'm good.
Yeah. All right, we're dancing in the club again. No crying. You go from crying in the club to dancing in the club. That's the vibe.
Yeah.
It's
no, you go from dancing to crying to dancing again. That's what I love that start. It's just the perfect whoops to bring you in up high, kick your ass right at the start, and then bring you right back. And what I really love about Shouldn't Matter, But It Does is exactly what I think you even mentioned it kind of in passing there about, even if you're in a good place, that if it doesn't matter, like what you laid out about not having all those things or having all those other things that make it not matter because you don't have that one thing. I think what I would argue is the feeling I got is even if you do have that thing, it's still like you could be happily married with kids, right? And wouldn't want to change anything in the world, wouldn't change anything. So there's no reason. It shouldn't matter. It shouldn't matter. But those old heartbreaks, it still matters, right? It still hurts. It doesn't matter what you have. It doesn't matter what you achieve. The brightness of it burns of two souls connecting like that. Not to get super duper hippy dippy here, but like what that song highlights to me is that what that creates, that spark that's created when two people come together and it burns that brightly, is always going to be there. It doesn't matter how perfect your life is. It always matters what could have been, right? You're always going to have that because it's just, it's such a deep seated feeling. Right. And I just love that about that song, where it doesn't matter if you're in a good place and a bad place, that's always going to matter. Right. And it shouldn't matter, but it does. Right. And just that, and like you said, the brutal honesty within that song, and every single line, like there's not one line in that song that doesn't absolutely tear you apart. And what I like about it is just the way the words, I think sometimes with John Mayer songs, it's funny because he's such an amazing lyricist, but he's such an amazing guitar player that sometimes it's easy to just enjoy songs. It doesn't matter what the lyrics are because he's playing guitar and it sounds so good because just of his playing abilities. But I feel like this song really highlights the lyrics, and you just every line in it is perfect, and there's no lines in it that is ever overshadowed by the music accompanying it. It is just, you are feeling every line of that word, of every line, every verse, you're feeling it, and it's hitting you because the song is designed that way so that you're really hearing the words, you're hearing the story that it's telling. And that's another reason where I just love that tune. Like, even if I love it because it makes me, want to fucking grab a whole box of Kleenex, but I still love it all the same.
I mean, so I will say there were 2 songs on this record that kind of fucked me up. That's the first one. And I don't like to look back at, I mean, I think it's very natural for people. You look back at past relationships and you see, exes or whatever, whatever. Mm-hmm. And they've moved on, they're doing well, and you've moved on and you're doing well. But I think there's always like a bit of you that's always like, why did this not work? And like, you're not upset. You're just like, you think about it. And you kind of wonder, I mean, maybe it's just the older I get, and a lot of my friends, and like my brother just got married. One of my best friends is engaged. I have to go to another one of my best friends' weddings in like October. Like, so I'm at that point. It's like people are like seriously settling in, and I'm single, having a good time, whatever. And a lot of my, friends are like, when are you going to find somebody? I'm like, that's not the point. But when I look back on some things, I'm like, what if I had done this? Like, would I be there? And I don't know if you ever get that vibe sometimes.
Yeah. No, I know exactly what you're saying. Yeah.
You just think about it. You're like, and you start thinking like, this shouldn't matter. Like, why am I thinking about this? Like, this is ancient history. I'm not trying to dig up old bones. And then you stop like, it kind of does though. Cause like, it's on your mind for some reason. So walk it back, figure out what's going on.
Yeah. And there's some piece of closure that is lacking there that you need.
That's what gets me. It's for past relationships I've had without that closure,
Mm-hmm.
and I hear this song and I'm like, God damn it. Like, if I had that, probably that final say or that final word, or things had gone a little bit differently, I think I would still love the hell out of this song and think, wow, this is really brutal and honest. But I think there's that different aspect. I'm slightly connected to it in a way that I didn't ask to be connected to it, but I'm kind of there. I'm like, fuck.
And I think everybody has some relationship in the past that they didn't get full closure on. I think you probably could rename that song Lack of Closure. Like that is, in a sense, what that song is about, is that lack of closure, and that still matters, right? Like, and it's going to matter until you get to that point. And I would argue, even if you have full entire closure, or I guess whatever you think that is, there's never that level. There's always going to be something that you don't understand. There's always going to be questions. There's always going to be things that you think, well, what if I did this different? What if this happened or this happened? There's always going to be those questions. So it's just that ephemeral. Everyone's going to have that feeling. And that's why it's so universal. I think that's why it's so emotional, because, I'm feeling this, but everybody that hears the song is going to feel this. This is so universal. It's such a part of the human experience that he just captured so well with that song.
I think the other thing too, sorry, I don't want to interrupt you, but the other thing too is like, it's just him with an acoustic guitar, like a little bit of drum beat in the back and a little bit of piano. It almost feels like he's having a conversation with you. Like, hey, let me just sit down and talk to you. And you're like, oh, Jesus. Okay. That's where we're at.
Exactly. And that's why I feel like the storytelling of that song is so highlighted, because of that, of just, it's stripped down so that you're really hearing these words have impact, and I'm going to make sure that you hear them. You're not going to get distracted by my fancy playing or fancy sound effects. You're going to take this and you're going to take it right to the dome, right? Like I intended it, which I love in his music, is those choices are so, that he's such a genius that, that's a choice. That's not just randomly, put together, that's just how it happened, right? Like, no, that's a choice right there. And what a great choice.
Oh yeah.
And then it brings us to New Light, which
we're in the club. We're dancing again.
I love that tune. That tune, when it came out as a single, was just such a, I'm trying to it was such new Mare and old Mare at the same time. And so many of the things that I love about John in one song. And it feels like there had to be songs like that on A Search for Everything that I'm just forgetting. But it felt, the feeling I got when I heard that is, I haven't heard something like this from John in a really long time. And I'm so happy to hear it again. It's just, and I'm not sure what that is, because like I said, I'm sure there was something on Search for Everything that would have filled some of those gaps, but it just, the gut feeling I got in that moment when I first heard that tune was, where has this been? Right. Like I love this. I love this John, and I love everything he does, but just to have that old school, it almost felt like a selfish, like a selfish love of it. I was like, ooh, this brings me back to like what first made me fall in love with John. Just like this kind of, he's got this in him. He can still grab you and make you move, make you dance. Like, fuck, let's go. I love that song.
It's just such a fun song. And I hear it at work sometimes. I'm like, turn it up. Someone turn this up. I don't know how we're going to turn it up. And, this will sound maybe kind of dumb, but so the song September by Earth, Wind & Fire, universally, I think it's an awesome song. It's every time you hear September by Earth, Wind & Fire, which was yesterday, it was the 21st of September. So I was playing that like, all right, let's go. But that's like, it's that kind of feeling where you're just happy, you're singing, you're kind of moving in your car, or you're dancing with buddies. Like, doesn't matter. You're just in a good place. It's the same feeling I get with New Light. And part of that song too is very honest Mayer. It's just like, I'm driving 40 in the friend zone kind of deal, which is not only where he's at relationship status, where he feels he's at, but also 40 years old when that song came out. So it's like driving 40 in the friends, like that's kind of dating sometimes. You get older and stuff. Everything about that song. There's nothing wrong with it. The guitar solo in that song was used on one of Prince's guitars.
Really?
Yeah. So they were in the studio working on it, and somehow it showed up like one of Prince's guitars. Like, we only had it for about an hour, and the solo you hear was on one of Prince's guitar, and the drum beats, like everything. It's so pre-Sob Rock that like when you hear it on Sob Rock as a whole, you're like, okay, I get it. This definitely lives here the best. It would have lived well on Search for Everything, and it thrived as a single, but it has a home.
It does. Yeah.
And I think that's what's great about it.
Yeah.
So when I hear it on Sob Rock, I'm always like, I never get tired of it. Let's go. Let's start trying to dance in the car. Let's sing it.
Exactly. And I love that too. I'm really glad you said that, because I feel like I was so worried about that going in. I've beat New Light to death so bad that it's going to be an annoyance to hear. Like, it's going to be hard to listen to this whole album through because I'm going to be annoyed to get to the song that I've already listened to so many times, but it fits so well that it almost got this new life, right? Like where you get to listen to it again. Right. And I feel like, looking at the words of it too, of just, like you said, just, you can almost say all the things we said about the last one, about the honesty and the words that go into it, and just the story that song tells, which, I think they both tell a story. Like when you look at Shouldn't Matter But It Does and you look at New Light, they both tell a story, and they both tell a really deep, rich story that has a lot of truth and a lot of pain and a lot of happiness to it. But where Shouldn't Matter But It Does just puts the story out front, and this is what you're getting, is you're getting the story, and we're going to package it and make it sound good so that the story hits you and it's emotional. But where New Light is, we're going to make an amazing song that's going to grab you. Even if you don't listen to the words and you don't really care about the story we're telling, this song's just going to grab you. But now, if you do enjoy it, you get both. You're going to have an amazing song that's going to grab you and move you around and make you dance, and you can appreciate it just for that. But if you want to, there's also this really in-depth story underneath it too. And that's one of those kind of grab big ones. I think that's why it's so good as a single too, is because it has the full gambit of what a song can be. It's got everything for all those people. There's people that really like the words. There's people that really like the melodies. You're going to enjoy it top to bottom. It's hard to find the criticisms in that song. Right. And I just feel like for so many reasons, and the placement, like we talked about, of just being that at that spot in that album is just so perfect for it to live there, and gave it a whole new lease on life. Even though I was the same way, where I'd listened to that song so many times by the time it came out in this album, but it still fits so perfectly there that I don't care. I'll listen to it again and again and again. Line me up. I'll take some more.
It's great. It's great. I mean, we've had that song since 2018. And I've seen him play it twice live. It's like he'll do Gravity, then New Light. And when New Light is playing, he has the music video in the background. Everyone's fucking dancing. He has confetti from the skies, and he's just having the time of his life. And everybody on that energy of, we're all here. We're all having a good time. We're all just going to sing, dance, and then go home afterwards. Like, it's just fun.
Oh, what a great tune. And then it goes into the most controversial song on the album, like we had said. Why You No Love Me.
This is the other one that fucked me up. This one really fucked me up. This fucked me up.
Ooh, I started playing. I was trying to just pull up the lyrics. I started playing. I can't have that.
I was listening to it before we started doing this. I just had Sabrock playing on vinyl. I was like, fuck. This one. So again, let's look at the name. Why You No Love Me. Again, it sounds stupid. I can admit that. It sounds childish and like kind of baby talk. But why you know? No, it's not that. And this song, there's some lines in this song that, if you really listen to it, will kill you. It's like, hurt me once, I let it be. Hurt me twice, you're dead to me. 3 times makes us family. Why can't you see I'm yours? It's like, oh my God. And him explaining, he's like, you always hurt your family. You don't try to, but when you love somebody that much and you want them in your life and you hurt them on accident, it's like, the first time you're kind of like, all right, I can forgive you. Second time you're like, are you fucking kidding me? Like, we're done.
Yeah.
And you're never done. And then you get back to it. You're like, I don't even care anymore. You get past the point. You're like, I just want you. I don't even care. And that fucked me up.
Yeah.
And I think that was the most that I really critically thought on, like, just anything. I was like, oh my God. Because again, like, shouldn't matter, but it does. I'm in a good place right now. I'm happy. I've moved on from any past relationship, any baggage, trauma, whatever. When I first heard that song, I was just, it was impossible.
Makes you second guess that.
It did. It was impossible for me not to. And again, I think I was like, I had it playing in the background. I was on Instagram checking something, and like an ex-girlfriend popped up or like reached out. Like, the universe basically was just like, you will think about this so much.
Yeah.
And I wasn't ready for it. And I thought about it like obsessively. And I just was like, I've been there. I have been in that point of a relationship where things are just like spiraling and you're doing everything right. And they're trying and you're trying. And then like, there's just nothing left to give. You're like, why don't you love me? Like, what is wrong here? Like, what can I do that can fix this? Or what can we get there?
Yeah.
And the answer is no. I couldn't. You can't.
Yeah.
When it's that crazy, but you're still just like, I don't even care that they have fucked me over or fucked my life up. And you're just like, I don't care. Like, we can work through this. Like, let's figure it out. Like, you messed up. Okay. let's talk about it. And they're like, no. I'm like, why? Like, I'm doing everything I can here, and you're holding on. And you hear that song, and I'm just like, oh my God.
Why? It's tough, eh?
It's so tough. I don't know why that song fucked me up as much as it did. And I remember listening to it. I was up north in Glen Arbor, Michigan when that came out. I was on like vacation for a week. So I was on vacation on Lake Michigan. That album came out perfect. But I was listening to it in the basement. My dad and stepmom were up there. My dad's like, what is he saying? And I was like, why you no love me? He's like, huh. Wow. And he just kind of like went back to what he was doing. I was, right? Like, I was just lost. I didn't understand it. I went to bed that night and I just was staring at the ceiling. I was like, why am I thinking about this person? Or why am I thinking about myself? Or I just kept running shit back. Mm-hmm. And shouldn't matter, but it does. Did it in a different way. That was more like a, if things had happened differently and I ended on good terms and like, I don't need to bring this up. I'm bringing it up with myself, and that's okay. I can deal with that. And I've had past relationships where you check in, maybe like, it's been some time. You're like, hey, I hope you're doing well. I saw you did this. Congratulations. Like, yeah. And then you talk and, one of my first girlfriends got married to this guy I know a little while ago. And like, I'm super happy for her. Like I reached out, I'm like, oh my God, congratulations. Like, that's awesome. Like, how are you doing? And you kind of catch up. And it wasn't even so much like a, do you ever wish this was us? Do you, like, that wasn't even in the realm of possibilities of my thoughts, but, you do think things like, if things have gone differently, you could have had that life versus why, love me is like, you're stuck. You can't do anything else. And they're just not there, and they've hurt you, or they're not there with you, and you don't even care because you're so stupid. And you're like, I will make this work. I can, whatever I can do. And at some point you just realize is like, they just don't love you.
Yeah. And that's
the hard part of it. It's like, why love me? Because the answer and you have to deal with it. And that's what fucking killed me.
Yeah. And it's like shouldn't matter, but it does is that the thought of could things be different? Like, should things be different? Kind of that looking back upon things that have already happened that are already set in stone. Whereas why love me is that in the moment, visceral, that childlike, right? Like why love me, that just at the deepest level of who that is in the most, inner child feeling that feeling that everybody's felt. This is another thing where this is so universal. Everybody has felt that, like, I love you so much. Why don't you love me? Like,
yeah,
because we're kind of taught, I think, as just a society that if you love something that much, like they'll love you back, that everything works out, that, almost that base idea that life is equitable, even though we know that, and we teach it to kids, just to give them enough of a pass through the early years until later. And we go, okay, we lied. Life sucks. It's not fair. But we give them that lie. But it's the visceral feeling of before you've been told. It's almost life. It's that moment when you've been told all your life that, it's going to work out and everything's okay. And that if you love something, like I feel validated because I feel I love you so much that this has to be true. This has to be right. This has to work because I feel this. And if you could just feel what I'm feeling, you would understand this too. And it's almost that moment of realizing the world is unfair, and that switch between that childlike innocence and that adult-like nihilism or whatever it is. It's that moment in between, and it just does it so good. Like, but what I love about it too, and going back to the choices that John Mayer makes, I think he's smart enough to know that the wording it that way of why love me, like that childish, whatever you call it. I think he knows that, and to stand by that decision and still roll it out and put that album out with that verbiage and have the lyrics go that way, knowing that it's going to bring on this flack, and to still try and make such a impactful song that is going to live forever and exist as something bigger than that controversy around that thing. I think that's amazing. And then the fact that he put that guitar solo on that song, because every time people, when I was in those groups and I'd see people say like, oh, why you love me so stupid and stuff, I'm like, how can you say a bad word about a song that has that guitar solo on it? Like, take all the words out of it out. Like, who fucking cares? Did you hear that fucking guitar solo? Like, chill the fuck out. It's a great song altogether. Right? Like, I'll learn, because I think I felt a little bit of that. Like, I don't think I gave that song as much of a chance. I kind of heard just why it just hits you weird, right? It's hard to wrap your head around, and I love it now.
Yeah.
But as soon as I got to that guitar solo, it's like, oh yeah, I'll learn to love the rest of that because I'm not going to not listen to the song with this guitar solo on it. And I just thought that was so smart. And I don't know if he thought it all the way through. Maybe that was just what he was feeling to play that guitar on that song. Maybe the emotions that we just talked about of something that depth brought that emotion out on the guitar. Who knows? But I just loved that had that because it was such a pocket ace to pull out against anybody that wanted to chuck shit at that song. It's like, did you hear that guitar solo? Right? Like, so I love it.
That song musically too. I mean, it's everything. I think it's very calming. You have the solo, which is just so good. And
yeah,
it's the perfect example of like not overplaying, playing just enough that you're like, okay. Because he could have shredded it and it would have thrown the whole song off. It's playing enough that you're like, oh. And you keep expecting, because you know John Mayer, like, oh, he's going to go hard on this. Doesn't have to. He doesn't want to. He doesn't need to. He shouldn't. Yeah. It works so well with how the song works and how it ends, and why we'll be there. Like, that's like the final phrase. Like, why won't you be there? He's like, why love me? And it just hits. Now I can say now that I've spent some time with it that I listen to it now with almost like what's the word I want to use? It's not like a fear, or not like fear, like a healthy respect. I think it's how I look at that. I listen to that song now and I think, okay, when we first met, you fucked me up. Now I listen to you and I think we're good. We're neutral. Yeah. I don't think about, past relationships like I did that first time hearing it. I don't think about it as in terms of like, where I'm at now. But like, I'm never going to pretend that I didn't, because I fucking did. And it hit me so hard. I obsessed over that song. Like, that song, like, I remember I played Sob Rock all the way through. And then I went back and played through again. And then I played Why You Don't Love Me for like a long time. Just that song. I was like, I need to understand this. I need to understand how I'm feeling right now, because I'm not okay.
Yeah.
And I thought about that too. I was like, and again, seeing the title, you're thinking like, okay, like this is going to be stupid. Why You Don't Love Me? It could have been anything. And it's a very honest, like, song. He's like, woke up and you weren't there kind of deal. Why You Don't Love Me? Why you don't even care? Why you say you will be there? It's like, oh my God. Like, I feel like everybody's had that. And you bring up the great point of when you're a kid, you want to believe it's like the world is rainbows and unicorns and love and Care Bears and everything works out magically. And you get a little bit older, you're like, oh, by the way, this feeling, this sadness, it's called heartbreak. Get used to it. It's going to happen a lot.
Yeah.
It could be with anything, sports teams, movies, music, relationships is the big one, but you can draw that feeling out in all kinds of, different avenues. But then you look back, you're like, well, when I was a kid, I didn't know this existed.
Yeah.
Like the lie you were told.
Nobody told me about this.
Exactly. I mean, you nailed it on the head. It's like nobody told you about it. And then you're there and you're living through it. You're like, this fucking sucks.
Reminiscent of 83 a little bit, like that same kind of that same undercurrent.
Reflective innocence.
Yeah.
Of looking back at it. It's like, the things now, would you change anything? No, but like you look back, you're like, God, if I was younger again, I wouldn't have to experience this pain. Yeah. That's really how you look at it. You're like, if I could go back and I'm happy and like, I got everything I need. I got my sippy cup. I got nap time. I got Barney TV, whatever. Yeah. Life is good. You're just a kid. You don't know anything. And the people in your life, your parents, your family, your friends, everybody loves you. Everything's great. And then you get older. You're like, oh, there's an opposite. They can have the option to not love me. I thought everybody had to love me.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's a jarring thing when you're little and you grow up a little bit. You're like, well, this sucks. And then that feeling never goes away. You just hopefully never have to deal with it as much.
Right.
But there's always the people who don't like you. There will always be people who disagree with you. There will always be people who
see the world different.
And that's okay. That's healthy. Yeah. That's how the world's supposed to be. I'm not saying that feeling shouldn't be there, but I'm also not saying that it doesn't suck, because it fucking does.
And I love what kind of we talked about was it starts with Last Train Home. It's you're up here, then you get taken down here, which shouldn't matter, but it does. And you come back up with New Light, and then Why You Don't Love Me, bring you right back down. And then it goes into Wild Blue, which
then you level. You kind of
level. Yeah.
You level.
Yeah. And it grabs you. I'm curious what your thoughts are before I talk about Wild Blue. I'm curious your thoughts.
I got to be honest. Wild Blue didn't immediately reach out to me because I was so jarred off Why You Don't Love Me. And then the song after that, what's next? It's Shot in the Dark. That is so 80s pop rock.
Yeah.
Happiness, and you're like, Oh, I don't even know why I was sad 2 songs ago. But like Wild Blue, I think where it's placed again, the placement on this record is every song is so well placed.
Yeah.
Wild Blue comes on, and you're like, whoa, this is different. And it's so Dire Straits, like guitar tone and like Sultans of Swing kind of slow hand clapped, and like that. I think as a guitar guy and a music lover, you appreciate that the most initially. You're like, this is cool.
Yeah.
I don't know what it is. Maybe it's just me. The audio on the vocal on that track, it sounds kind of like echoey. And I think maybe that's by design. It could just be me. I feel like the other ones are very present, but it sounds like they recorded it through, old mics and old things. And I kind of like that too.
Yeah.
It's a song that I needed to warm up to a little bit. I mean, I've never found a song I didn't love, but some songs take longer than others. And I can admit that.
Yeah.
Fucking Born and Raised took me a month or two to understand. When it first came out, I was like, I don't get this. This isn't John Mayer. And I sat, I'm like, just listen to the songs. And then you start listening, you're like, oh, if I ever get around to Living, that punched me in the face. That's good.
Yeah.
And then you hear all those songs. It's great. This was the only song I think in this record that I needed to think about a little bit. I had to turn my brain on. But then you hear that outro guitar solo, and I'm like, okay, this is pretty sweet. This is so Dire Straits and just 80s, like. And I think that's the thing. He took elements of some of like very familiar elements of the 80s. So there's like that Dire Straits solo in that song. Shot in the Dark feels very upbeat. I could say Tears for Fears, Duran Duran, whatever have you. There's some Eagles kind of vibes on the song. I mean, the whole record it flows so well. And then once you buy into that, you're like, this is what he's going for, but modern, but also John Mayer. But it's a multitude of ideas and things that needed to execute well. And I think he nailed it. So Wild Blue, I'm a fan of. It's, if I had to have like a least favorite, and that's not saying I don't love every song on this record, it's probably that one, just because I just needed to think more about it. And the other ones I immediately was like, all right, I'm in. I got it.
Yeah. And I think, that was kind of similar with me of, I feel like so many of the other ones I feel like I still haven't connected with the story of Wild Blue. Like I love the song, I love the beat, and I love what it does. And that usually happens the same way with me of, whether it's John Mayer or somebody else. A lot of times there's certain songs that jump out at me and really speak to me at the time. And then there's certain songs that I just enjoy or don't enjoy, but I enjoyed Wild Blue, but I think it's still in that spot for me where it's a song that I enjoy. I love the sound of it. It's a really cool song. But the story of it hasn't really spoken to me. And I'm sure at some point it'll just be playing and I'll just hear it the right way, or I'll be in the right mood and it'll really speak to me and I'll get to that point. But that's just one of those ones where I feel like I appreciate Wild Blue as a song, but I don't appreciate it like a John Mayer song just yet. I feel like the way I'm a fan of John Mayer and the way I appreciate all of his music and put it into this category, it hasn't quite fallen into that category yet, right? It doesn't mean I don't like the song. It's just not there yet, right? And that was something I saw. And again, messing around, trying to play it on guitar and stuff is kind of fun. And that made me enjoy it a lot better once I started playing a little bit. It's kind of just a fun little tune to play. And then it rolls into Shot in the Dark. And that was one where, I really enjoyed that song. It was another one I would say, other than the pre-released songs, I would say this one was most similar to something we had heard before with Mayer. It was another one that kind of harkened back to something that we had missed, through Paradise Valley and those albums when he went off a little bit. It was almost brought us back to maybe not all the way to Room for Squares, but like back into more of that time zone. I just really loved the I don't know, the beat of it and the optimism and pessimism in one song of like that. And I feel like that was something John Mayer used to always do, of just leaving like a little bit of hope, but like sure, this is dark and there's a lot of dark stuff, but there's that little bit of hope too. And this is one of those songs. It's like a classic Mayer, little bit of hope kind of song. Right. And I just love that of just, I don't know. What did you think about it?
I really love that song. That it's warm, it's bubbly, and right away. And it could just be me, but I feel like it's maybe just the first 2 notes. It starts off very similar to A Face to Call Home. Do you like it's that same kind of like pitch thing, and then guitar wise, watching him play it and like learning it a little bit, I'm like, that's just a fun song. But I think it feels like it would be the adopted child to Heavier Things if I had to throw it somewhere.
That's a good place. Yeah.
if I had to throw it somewhere, I could throw it in there like right after Come Back to Bed, or like something's missing. Like it'd be like if you took that theme of kind of like there's some darkness there, but there's gonna be hope.
Mm-hmm.
I think that's a lot of Heavier Things. A lot of Heavier Things is very much like anxiety, self-doubt and other things, but also a lot of very happy things. It's like New Deep's like, I'm new me, I'm gonna figure this stuff out. And it's a very solid record. And Wheel at the end of Heavier Things, just fucking so good. So I'd throw it on Heavier Things if I had to put it somewhere. But again, it's fun. I think it's reminiscent of some of his old kind of behavior of, like you said, kind of the optimism and a little bit of hope at the end. And you're like, yeah, and you root for him at the end of it. Like I'm rooting for him in that song. You're like, okay, it didn't work out, but it could. It might. I don't know. And it's not as open-ended or as Why You No Love Me or Should It Matter But It Does.
Yeah, exactly. Right.
Yeah, because we know how that song ended. I mean, he's Should It Matter But It Does is like, that's a song that's, probably kept him awake at night for years.
Mm-hmm.
And then Why You No Love Me is looking back on relationships. And I think it's very relatable that we've all been in that. Like I said, if things don't work out and you look back, you're like, why? Like, what can I do? But Shot in the Dark is just fun.
It is. It's a really fun tune, right? Like, and that's what I'm saying. I feel like the kind of optimism, pessimism balance. I feel like that's a theme that you're going to pick up if you listen to it, on that story level. Right. But I feel like in the same way of what was the song I compared that to was, New Light, right? Where I think it's very much in a similar way. If you don't want to take that aspect and get deep down with it, I think it's just another song that you can just play on and not think too much about, but it's a happy tune. It's upbeat. It gets you going. It hits you in that way, which I think all his music does. But I love those ones where it can stand on its own of just musically without the story that comes behind it. Right. Or some can stand on its own of just the story and the music doesn't need to be there. And oftentimes with Mayer, he is really good at melding both those things. So you get either side and you can enjoy it on this side, you can enjoy it on that side. I feel like that's just another one where I think probably right at the start, I don't know. I think the theme's pretty on the head. So I think I got it the first time. Like it's not like Wild Blue or like you say, you have to think about it and get there. It's not that it's not overly complex, right? The Shot in the Dark. I mean, from the title, you can kind of see what the tone of it's going to be, or it's one of a couple. And then it goes into, I guess I just feel like, which we've talked about a little bit already. And that was another one that was released before the album came out. And like you said, it's a bit of a protest song. Yeah. I feel like that one, I feel like I don't have my head wrapped around it fully of what he was trying to say. I feel like that was another one where, and sometimes I feel like I don't want to invest the time to think about what it is. And I just want to enjoy the song. And I feel like that's what it was. And I think that was also for a lot of the songs that he's releasing kind of as the drips and drabs before you get the full thing, is you just, sometimes you want to squeeze it for everything it is and try and get everything out of it. Listen to it, listen to the story behind it, listen to the music above it, listen to everything. And sometimes you just want to just enjoy a good old Mayer tune and not overthink it and just kind of enjoy it. And that's what I felt like I did with, I guess I just feel like is like, I don't want to chop this song up and dissect it. I just want to enjoy it. And I don't know if that's just the way that the songs were released, of that's how I was feeling at that moment when that song came out, of that's just how I wanted to enjoy it. And maybe I'll change that in the future, but that's kind of how I enjoyed that one. What did you think?
I mean, so when it first came out, I felt like it was very reflective on, I guess, himself and kind of the current climate we were living in. Could be just musically, could be politically, could be socially. But when you hear things, I guess you just feel like, the joke's getting old and good things are gone and things like that. You're like, oh, okay, well, yeah, there's probably some truth to that, and it's like, but it is hopeful. It's like, and if I go blind, I still find my way. I guess I just felt like giving up today, which is like, okay, that's fair. Sometimes everyone's like, has that day where like, it's a lot of shit going on in the world right now. And I can't do anything about it. And I don't really want to. And I just kind of want to hang here in this place, like safety. And I think it's good to every now and then look at stuff and be like, I don't know how I feel about that. Or, I don't know how I feel about things. How do I personally feel about this? And if you feel like giving up, you're like, I think I'm just kind of done with that. I thought it was okay. But again, it's one of those songs too, if I hear it and then you hear the guitar solo in that song and you're like, okay, now I'm just having fun.
Yeah. It kind of takes you from one side to the other with,
Yeah. So I think it's a good song. I mean, I never really got burnt out on it.
Yeah, that's one of those ones I didn't beat that one to death like I did with New Light or
I was playing with
Last
that
Train
song.
Home.
It's like a 5 or 6 minute song, and the last 2 minutes are just John shredding on this guitar, and that's perfect. But it was one of those songs I was like, I don't feel like I can beat this to death because I don't want to, but also, I just didn't feel like I needed to.
Yeah, it's kind of same here.
I got it pretty quick, and I thought I like this. I like this a lot. This is a little bit different, and I think by that point, that was his biggest change at the time from like Search for Everything, because we had Search for Everything, we had New Light, and then we get this like kind of acousticy, folky driven protest song. I'm like, oh, this is different, and I like it. It's a different vibe. You're not dancing like New Light, and it's not like, yeah, let's go. You're like, all right. But at the same time, you don't have to turn your brain on, or you can turn your brain on. This song asks nothing of you.
Yeah, it's very open-ended.
But what you want to give it, it's like, hey, I'm here, and we can have a conversation if you want, but we don't have to.
And I think that's kind of what the song is about at its depth of just, I guess I just feel like, right, with all this stuff going on right now, this is just how I feel. And I think a lot of people are just going through a lot of things that this is just how I feel. Like things are so crazy right now that I don't like what I'm feeling a lot of the time, but I guess that's just what it is. Like with considering all the aspects of what's going on, I think the open-ended of that, of kind of, he's saying, this is what I feel like. More of what he's saying is just like, it's okay if you just feel some weird shit right now, because life is weird right now. And just to leave it that open-ended, right, to anybody of whatever that is that you're feeling at that time. Right. I think that's another beautiful way to look at it. And then it rolls into Till the Right One Comes. And that is another song that hits you in the feels. And I feel like,
but it's happy.
It is.
Yeah,
it is. But I feel like it's happy, but I'm curious to ask you about this, because I felt like when I was listening to this song with this sounds silly, but just to say, like, my relationship with John Mayer, right? Like, of just how I appreciate it, how much I'm a fan, and how in depth that fandom goes, and how researched it is, and to know his life story and to know his pain points. It was sad for me to listen to, because it feels like I just want so much for him, and just to hear him talk about, waiting for that right one, and just to know such an amazing person that, he deserves that, and he wants that, right? Like, I want John, I just want you to be happy, and I want you to have that right one, where it's not a sad song on its face, but knowing the whole context around it of who's singing the song and who created the song and what that was birthed from made it sad to me, just because I want so badly for him to the happiness. I want him so badly to not have to sing that song, right? Like that was how that song hit me. And I really enjoyed that song, but it's just kind of, every time I listen to it, it's almost tough for me to listen to, because I always listen to it through the lens of who's singing it and all that extra baggage that comes with it.
I'm 100% there with you. I mean, and it's funny. My mom thinks of this once, and I was like, okay. And I think just like one day I like just had it in terms of like everybody I know is getting married. My brother just got married. Like everyone's like dating, and like I'm always like the single guy with all my friends. And which is, there's nothing wrong with that. The problem arises when people are like, oh, well, wouldn't it be great if you had somebody, like we could double date? And it's like, yeah, because I totally love being by myself all the time.
Yeah.
Like the idea occurs, like I'm not even trying. And like even in that song, they're kind of like, they're asking me, like, they think I'm crazy. Some people think I'll never love again. It's like, no, you just haven't found them. And so very much like you, I hear that through the lens of John. It's like, John, you do deserve this. Please find this. And then selfishly, it's like, I fucking deserve this too. I want to find this, and I will. But it's hopeful. And again, it's upbeat. But I think, like you said, when you listen to it through John, I mean, clearly John's singing it, but like, it's very personal. It's like, wow. It's like a very lighthearted version of Shouldn't Matter, But It Does. It's like till the right one comes along, and then you think about it a little bit too much, and then you get to Shouldn't Matter, But It Does.
Yeah.
That makes sense?
Yeah. And I feel like for some reason, right, like the way this is getting multiple levels down deep, and me putting my own stuff onto it, but it seems like that message of what Till the Right One Comes is such a positive message, and it's so true. And it's that message of, right, all that stuff doesn't matter, and whatever else says, there's one out there for you, and you're gonna find it. And there's always, and that is such a happy message.
So hopeful.
But for some reason, when I hear him sing it, what I hear is that he's saying, this is how it works, and this is how the world works. I'm just different. And like, for some reason, like, he never says this, but for some reason I add this on of, I get the sadness of him saying, like, yes, this is true, and this is what everyone else should feel, but that's not for me. I'm different, right? Like,
Ooh, that's interesting.
You know what I mean? Like I almost see,
Yeah.
I feel like I hear him saying in his head of like, yes, this is how it should be. And this is how it works for everybody else. But like mine's just not coming. Like I'm just, it's almost like
Yeah.
he's saying it almost, he's trying to tell himself that of like, I need to believe in this because, but for some reason it just doesn't, I don't get that full connection that he fully believes in it and that he's still right. Like that's the sadness I get. And I don't know where I pull that from. Maybe that is just me connecting way too many dots with my obsession with him, but that's what I get of like him trying to tell himself, like there's one coming, like almost trying to convince yourself. And just, there's some sadness in that just honestly just breaks my heart. And it's not like it's a really beautiful song. It's a happy song. It's about, there's always going to be, and things are going to work out. But to me, for some reason, because of all that song just kills me. That's one of the toughest ones for me to listen to every time.
No, I totally get that. I mean, I don't know if you ever saw the Kerwin Frost interview.
I don't know if I did.
It's great. It's like its own little podcast, but they have it on YouTube as well.
Yeah.
And Kerwin's talking to him, just like, have you kind of given up the idea? And John's like, no, of course not. He's like, it breaks my heart that people think that I don't want to be married, that I don't want to have somebody. It's like, I'm
okay. Now I think I have seen that one. Now that you mentioned it.
Yeah. So, I mean, I think it's a very fair response to think. I mean, and he's just like, I'm waiting, and it doesn't help that COVID happens. You can't meet people or, I think also to some degree, we might have talked about this before, when like about John Mayer, how he started, how people didn't believe in him. He's like, I will be this guy. And then I feel like you're always kind of wondering, are people with you for who you are, or are they with you because you're John Mayer?
Right. Yeah.
And I think that's why celebrities date celebrities, because they understand like the mindset of like, we're both famous. We both kind of have this lifestyle. So if you're with me, you're probably with me because you want to be with me, not because of what I can offer, because you can offer that to yourself.
Yeah. Yeah.
So I think that's definitely an aspect of it. But no, he's talked about it. He's like, oh, it kills me that people assume that I am this like Lothario, womanizing guy who doesn't want to get serious, doesn't want to have a family, doesn't want to have kids. He's like, little do you know, that's like the number one thing I want.
Right.
He's like, I just haven't found it yet. He's like, it's tough. And then you're like, how is it tough for John Mayer? But then you're like, okay, so now I don't feel as bad not having found it, but still, you think about it like that aspect. And I think maybe age is definitely like the main driving force of like why maybe that hits a little harder. I'm only 25. I'm young. I have my whole life.
Yeah.
John's 42. When you're 42 and you're not married and you're an uncle and your brothers have kids and your parents his dad's like 90 something. I think both his parents are quite old. And I thought about this the other day. I was at my brother's wedding and my grandma was there, and I was like, God, I really hope that within the next several years I find somebody so that my grandma can be at my wedding. And you think weird things like that, like, when's it going to happen? And that's the other thing. When you're surrounded by everybody who has somebody and they're always like, oh, you're going to find them, you do have to convince yourself that to some degree. You're like, no, I know I will. It'll be all right. But when though? Like, why?
Yeah.
And it's like
hard to get caught up in that. Yeah.
You're a mouse on the wheel and the cheese is right there. You're just going to keep running and get it. Eventually you're going to get it, but you're just going to keep going in the circle. It just never ends. And I think that's kind of where he's at. And I think he knows that. So like you said, I think it is like for everybody who hears that, you're like, oh, the right one will come along, but I'm different because I can't find it. And it's really maybe him telling himself that. That's a good point. I like that.
Yeah. Yeah. And then it goes to Carry Me Away. And was that another one that was that released before?
That was released before.
Okay. That's what I thought.
That came out in 2019, 2020.
Yeah, I think so. Yeah. And that was one, again, I didn't beat it into the ground like Last Train Home or New Light. I definitely listened to this one more than what was the other one we just said that we got early that I didn't listen to?
Guess I Just Feel Like.
Yeah, I guess I just feel like I probably listened to it more than that, but less than the other ones. Carry Me Away. Yeah, no, that's again, one of those songs where I have less, I haven't intellectualized as more. I more just leave that one as just, I just like the way that song just moves me. Just like the rhythm of it. I just like to close my eyes to that song and just like kind of rock and just let it like carry you away. Kind of like, I know that's super silly and super too on the nose, but like, I really like I feel like the name of that song is so good because it just, the melody of it and not even the words, right? Like, I think this is one of those ones where just the lyrical story that it tells is, I'm sure, great and aside, but I haven't even dove into that because I just don't even want to. I just want to just let that song take me and just feel that one. Like, that's just one that like rocks me and just makes me want to move. I love it.
I 100% agree. I remember when that song came out where I was, and God, I keep attaching all these past relationships to these fucking.
But
I remember
it's hard
like,
not to.
Yeah, it's hard not to, right? But like, I remember I had started talking to this girl, and nothing ever became of it. We just became really good friends, which I think is awesome. It worked out for the best. But like when that song first came out, it was exciting, and it was like the beginning of like that relationship where things are exciting. Like, just carry me away.
Yeah.
It kind of had the Love on the Weekend vibe of like, I don't know what's going to happen, but like, you know, let's go figure this out. Put some tequila in my coffee cup. You know, like let's, you know, take me away. Like, let's go do something.
Yeah.
And it's that exciting part. I feel like the beginning of when you meet somebody. So that was my thought when that first happened. And then the girl and I just became like really good friends instead. I'm like, I think we just vibe better as friends. She's like, oh yeah. And then I was kind of like, oh, do I listen to this song differently? The answer is no. I still listen to it with that kind of like, it's the beginning of and things are good, they're happy. And this is why I love having this conversation, because we're having different opinions, but we're also like, that makes sense. Like, this is great.
Yeah.
Love it. But what I also thought was unique, and I maybe I'm in the wrong side of the camp on this, but so our friend Nick Kames, Nick texted me. He's like, dude, have you heard the re-released version of Carry Me Away? And I was like, what are you talking about? He's like, oh, he redid it. And I was like, what do you mean? He's like, and when I downloaded the album on Apple Music, I transferred, I think, the original one I have of the version of Carry Me Away. And so I'm like, I'm listening to it like, dude, what's the problem?
I don't hear any difference. Yeah.
I don't hear any difference. He's like, okay, hold on. And then he sends me it like through Spotify or something, but there's a drum beat and it's consistent. And I was like, oh, that's different. And it does change the song. And
I don't know if I've heard that or not. Cause I feel like,
yeah, no, there's the version where it's kind of open and it feels very open, but you have the, and that's good. I love that version. Then you have kind of,
oh, really?
It's driving the song.
I don't think I've heard that version now that you mention it. Cause I
don't know. I
got some homework after this, clearly.
There we go. It's jarring at first. And I remember hearing that and immediately I was like, no. I'm like, what the fuck? Because I had beaten it kind of into the ground, the original version.
Yeah.
I stuck with it. I listened to it a lot. I still prefer the original version.
Yeah.
I like it open. I just think that works. And John felt completely different. He thought that it was too open. He's like, I wanted to have that consistency. I was like, no, I kind of liked it. And it's open.
Yeah. It's so open. That's what I like. That's what I feel like. Almost like
exactly.
It like blows you in the wind. It's so open that there's nothing tying you down to. And that's exactly what I was saying at the start that I didn't have the right words for. But now that you put it that way, that's exactly what I was feeling. I like this song. It's so open and so airy. It just lets you like flow with it and just you can ride the melody almost.
You start, So the original version, you're going side to side. You're kind of bobbing your head.
Yeah.
Version, you're just nodding your head. You're going along with the beat. You're like, this works. They both work. It's essentially the same song. And I think it's so unique. You take out that one thing or you add that extra layer in. It completely changes the flavor for the song. So
I'm really excited to hear it now.
Oh, yeah. You got to find it. And I think it's on YouTube. I mean, because I couldn't find it at first. I'm like, Nick, what the fuck are you talking about? He's like, dude, it's out there. I will send it to you. And he loves it. He thinks that's the best one. And I was like, okay, I think I'm just partial to the way the original one made me feel about that open, kind of like you rock with it and you're just kind of carried away. Yeah, it's on the nose. I don't really care. Yeah. That's maybe the vibe we're going for. And then it just feels almost too dialed in, if that's even a thing.
Yeah.
With Aaron Sterling on the drums. And Aaron Sterling has been on several of his things and hell of a drummer. And it's not bad. Like, by no means is the song bad. It does not ruin the song. But if you're used to the original version and then you all of a sudden have to switch to this new one, it's a bit of an adjustment. So you're definitely gonna have to check it out. I'm
excited for it.
Yeah, I like the old one more just because I like the feeling, but the new one also, it's a different feeling. And it's still a great song. So a song that we were familiar with that got remastered for Sob Rock. So that's why it's kind of that's all right. Okay, John, you've layered it differently.
Snuck something in there.
You did.
Which then brings us to the last song on the album, and I have to make a really embarrassing admission here. I honestly could not tell you all I want is to be with you. I couldn't even name you the beat of it. I can't think of it in my head. I can't even play it for myself right now, which is really embarrassing as this in depth of a John Mayer fan. But for some reason, that song hasn't stuck with me enough to have a good memory of it.
Interesting.
I'm curious your thoughts on the song, and I'm going to take your thoughts on the song and I'm going to re-listen to it. I'm sure as soon as I listen to like the first 10 seconds, I'm like, oh no, I know this song, right? But for some reason in my head, I'm just completely blanking on it.
Okay. So a couple of things. Number one, I really like this song. I think it's a great rounding out song to the entirety of Sob Rock because the ending is this awesome solo and it kind of just fades out. John loves fading shit out. He doesn't like
he does too, hey?
He loves and he's even says like, I like things fading out. Do. It's so Paradise Valley that I kind of get giddy. Like it feels like it was belonged on that record at the very end. But God, what's the last song of Paradise Valley? On the Way Home. That song, which
Oh, I love that song, dude.
Oh, I know, right? Just start going. That song is the perfect conclusion to that record.
Yeah, it is.
But this one felt like if I had to put it on a record, I would put it as like the sneaky, like, oh, Paradise Valley's done. All of a sudden you hear this, like, what the fuck is this?
Yeah.
And it's very simple. I watched him play this on Instagram live. I saw him play it live and I was like, this is a cool song. And then I was like, oh, we got this one. Like, it was just him with a PRS Silver Sky in his house in Montana, maybe a looper pedal. And he's just singing. And again, it's the first time you're hearing it. So you don't know the words. You don't know what's really where it's going. But maybe that's part of it. Maybe I was lucky to kind of be in on it before. But
in that moment,
I also will say the first time I heard it, I was confused. I was like, this does not feel Sob Rock-esque. That was my initial thought. I thought, how did I just go from Carry Me Away, which has been remastered? I went like, till the right one comes along, like upbeat, peppy. This felt so Paradise Valley to me that it was jarring, but like I stopped and thought about it. I'm like, no, this is a perfect album ending, but I still struggle if it's the perfect Sob Rock ending.
I hear you.
I do think it's good. It's simple, and it's very much like the conclusion of, if we look at Shoulda Matter But It Does, Why You Don't Love Me, till the right one comes along, and this is the last like omission. It's like, all I want is to be with you.
Yeah.
And it's like, oh, so the thread that is almost through this entire record, it ends with this. Just all I want is to be with you. And that's all he's saying. And it's chill, it's melodic. And then you get this beastly guitar solo. And then in the background is all I want. And just everything is so well done that when it fades out, you're like, wow. And then you hear Last Train Home again, and it brings you right back in.
Yeah.
Oh, let's go. You're like, I'm ready for round two.
Yeah.
So I totally get being kind of like, I'm not there, because I loved it. I just was like, this feels so Paradise Valley.
Yeah.
Which made me like now thinking about it, like I'm like giddy about it. I'm like, oh, Paradise. Because the ending of Paradise Valley, it made me think of Paradise Valley. And then I started thinking about some other songs. I'm like, this is just a master in his craft. And if you can take here and you want to go there, you can go there because he's done that. And if you want to go over here, you can. It felt like a great conclusion to a record. Again, I still don't know if it's the right one for Sob Rock, but I love it because, Last Train Home comes back on. You're like, run it back. Let's go.
Yeah. And just to make sure that we do this the right way, I'm going to give that song a really good listen before I do the intro and outro for this episode, whenever that is. And I'm going to put my thoughts on that last song on the album in the outro of this episode, so people can still get my take on that song, because I don't want to leave I don't want to give my take on 9 songs out of an album and leave the 10th one off the ass end. So I'm going to give it a good listen and dive into it, because, I'm sure I know it. I'm sure for whatever reason, it must just, and that's what I'm saying. I feel no guilt over that, because there's so many songs from John Mayer that like have hit me multiple years later in a different way. I'm just listening like, oh, what is this song? Like I've heard the song a million times, but it's just never been the right setting for it to really hook on and hit you like that. So I know the fact that I have that good of a take on 9 of the 10 songs this early into an album release, right? Like I'm a guy that takes a long time with them, especially if I fall into, if there's other music that kind of hops in, which I think did happen right after John released that album. I found a bunch of music that I really liked. And then just recently when I found Tash Sultana, I have not listened to any other artist almost at all since, like for a month and a half, which I can't even remember the last time I found an artist that has hit me that hard. Right. Like just, it's wild, man. Like it's so much fun, but I feel like that's what's taken away. I maybe haven't given Sob Rock as much of a listening to as I would have, right? Like definitely have given it a healthy,
Yes.
10, 20, 30 listens. Right? Like, let's not be crazy here.
I'm exactly the same way. I mean, like I said earlier in the beginning of this, I went and saw Dave Matthews Band. It was very last minute, very random. And I knew several songs, and there was a few that I really loved. And this is just a funny story. So one of my favorite Dave Matthews Band songs is called 41, which is the 41st song he wrote.
Mm-hmm.
And it's very kind of reflective of like the record labels and people he used to work with. And it's like, we used to play to all the people in the crowds where all the loneliness that nobody notices. It's like, but now all you really want is my money. Now you really just want this. So 41 comes on, and it's just like, it's the greatest thing ever. So the entire show, also, because I love John Mayer, let's run it back. There is a version of him playing 41 with Dave Matthews on electric guitar, and it is beastly. Also, because I am a John Mayer guitar nut, Tim Reynolds, Dave Matthews, like electric guitar guy, was using a Cypress Mika Fender Stratocaster, John Mayer signature. I immediately was like, I know that tone. They zoomed in. I'm looking at the knobs. I'm like, holy shit. And like, I'm looking at the back. I'm like, this is a Fender's John Mayer Strat. I'm like, let's go. And the entire show, like, I just kept saying 41, 41. 8 songs get into it, and I just give up. I'm like, okay, like I'm not gonna hear it. It's deep cut. And then all of a sudden it starts playing. I'm like, oh my fucking God. Like, it was the best. So I had been on this huge Dave Matthews Band, like bender.
Yeah.
And I never used to listen to him. 25. I went 25 years without giving him a look.
I never have. And I will after this, very clear, but I've never given Dave Matthews a full. I mean, I've heard the radio hits every once in a while, but even that, because of this, my age and the time I was in, and when he was at his height, I was still deep into country and not listening to much of the other stuff. Right. Like, I think now is the time to give it a chance. Now that my horizons have opened so much since then, like that was the time to check him out.
And fun fact, that was John Mayer's first concert. It was a Dave Matthews Band concert.
Really? Hey?
Yeah. He was like 9 in Berkeley. He's like, I'm going to do this. And then, and them playing together one time, I think John's like, my first concert was Dave Matthews Band. So this is pretty freaking sweet that I'm up here playing with him. Yeah. And I think you'll like it. Like his first record, I would say Under the Table and Dreaming, just give that a look.
Yeah.
You're going to recognize some of the songs, and then you're going to listen to some. You're like, oh, this is so acoustically driven. And that's part of why I'm like really dial into acoustic stuff. And I've found some deep cuts of Mayer, like acoustic performances. I'm like, oh, I need to learn this or relearn this. And it's been great. Like, and I love when you find somebody like that who really kind of ignites that love. Like, I'm so happy that you're giving Tom Misch a listen.
Oh man, I loved it. Like I'm so happy, but so mad at myself that now I've known, like, for however many months it's been since you told me about him till now, that I haven't been enjoying his music. Like, I get so mad at myself when I get a recommendation, I don't take it right away, and I end up loving it because it's like, this is months I could have had, right? Like of enjoying this. I think last time I told you the story of listening to that Childish Gambino album that I had been told about.
Some of that. Yeah, it was. Oh so my God,
good, man!
I just stopped listening to it. I was like, Nick was right. This is destroying me.
Yeah, that album start to finish, and the way it flows, like that is one of those like masterpieces that is just top to bottom, start to finish, impeccable. I love that album.
Go back to his old stuff, and I started to like 2005. I forgot about this.
Right?
Probably like, this is old, like Childish Gambino, and I think for like a week or two, I just was like, start to like where you're at. I'm like, look where he is now. Look where he started. I'm like, Community, like all these things. I'm like, outstanding.
Yeah. Amazing actor, like writes his own stuff, writes like one of the best TV shows, has a stand-up special that's actually really funny. And stand-up is such a difficult thing, right? He's an amazing musician. Like that guy is so talented. Like I can't even explain to people just how ridiculous it is. And I think we're going to see in the future, because I think he's just been held back by the studios and the infrastructure around what he wants to do. And I think more and more we're going to see him unfettered and unleashed, and we're going to see the real talent of what he is and what he can do. I feel like we're only scratched the surface on what Donald Glover is and what he's brought to the world. That guy is just impeccable in every sense of the word.
Freak of nature. And he really is. Yeah. And somebody who I'm going to throw my hat in the ring of, somebody who I think is arguably, and I've had this not argument, but I've had this discussion with people. This person I think is arguably one of the funniest people. He can act, he can sing quite well, he can dance, he's a musician. Seth MacFarlane.
Interesting. He can sing, he can dance. Yeah.
I have I have a Seth MacFarlane record, like vinyl. It's like jazzy
Really?
stuff. I have all of his stuff on my phone. He has a Christmas record. He has all these jazz and swing.
Well, his voice is impeccable.
Oh my gosh. And his band is phenomenal.
He has a band? I didn't even know that.
Well, I mean, the band for Family Guy, like all like the instrumental, like and Ted, like it's the same guys, and it's so good. He's so damn funny. And I always think, I'm like, this dude is one of the most talented people I've ever seen. And people are like, well, Family Guy sucks. I'm like, that doesn't matter if you think Family Guy sucks.
Also, who thinks Family Guy sucks? I'd like to meet these people. I've never heard one person say that sentence in my life.
I've heard people say, like, I don't get it. I'm like, okay, well, you don't get it. Well, they're like, they're too offensive. That's a whole different conversation.
Yeah.
But I mean, for my money, I think Donald Glover, Seth MacFarlane, some of like the heaviest hitters, and like you wouldn't think that.
Yeah.
There's sleeper hits. I'm all about the sleeper hits musically. Like Donald Glover, you're like, oh yeah, Community. I'm like, yeah, hilarious on Community.
Yeah,
his records
so
speak
funny.
for themselves. He did stand up and like he writes. I mean, even in solo and acting, Atlanta, that TV show is awesome. Everything he does is so good.
Everything he touches.
He's got American Dad. He's got Family Guy. He has The Orville. He has several jazz records put out. He has got movies. I mean,
I never thought until you lay it out like that. I'd never put him in that same category, but I think you're exactly right. That is exactly what it is, of just pure talent and capability and drive to put forward whatever he wants to put forward in whatever medium that happens to be, and the confidence that's going to be awesome. That is like, other than take everything else aside, just that confidence is wild to me. Like, and I hope to be that one day where I'm just that confident I can step into any arena I put myself to and hopefully knock it out of the park. But I don't know. I don't know if that's
the podcast is thriving. I love it. I love it.
Yes, sir. So I'm curious, now that we've kind of done the in-depth song for song breakdown of Sob Rock as a whole for the album, how does that sit? And I think it's probably too early to even ask this, because when I try and do that to myself, I think I don't even know where I put Sob Rock, because it's still too early for me to even articulate my full feelings on it. But having said that, I know it's probably going to change as you go further into your life and hear more stuff. But as it sits now, where is Sob Rock in your rankings of your John Mayer albums?
Oh, this is a good question. It's tough. Hands down for me, for my money, and I feel like I'm always in this camp alone. I always will put Heavier Things as my all-time favorite. It's raining right now in Bowling Green, Ohio. It's pouring rain. It's been like that all day. I drove into work playing Clarity, and I felt totally where I'm supposed to be. That album, it's very thematic in my life, and it will always hold number one.
Yeah.
What is not going to hold number two, and this will piss people off, is Continuum. I love Continuum. Don't get me wrong.
Yeah.
I think it's great. I think it's overrated. It's not the word I'd use. Overhyped, not the word I'd use. But I think that when you've been in this,
loved by the casuals.
It's loved, but it's the filthy casuals. They're like slow dancing, grab. I'm like, yeah, they're awesome songs, but like, you're missing so much. So I would probably put Heavier Things 1, Room for Squares 2. I think I would, and then it gets a little dicey there. I mean, because I do love Search for Everything. I would probably put the next one at 3. We'd say Search for Everything, then Sob Rock. It's probably sitting at 4.
Sob Rock, hey, really?
Interesting. And I think part of it, and I have to be honest with myself, is because I went 4 years without like a new record.
Right.
So there's the part of me that's like, this is new. Love it, hold it, cherish it, play the hell out of it. And I'm still really, I guess, in that honeymoon phase. Of loving everything.
Which is why I said I think it's too early to even have this conversation. But it's it'd be interesting. But I'm glad we're talking about it, because it's interesting to see where it sits now, and then maybe to ask that question again in a couple of years, maybe when his next album comes out, and then to see where it's shuffled out, because I feel the same way. Like right now,
it is like, and it's so hard to rank some of these records, because like Battle Studies is phenomenal. You have. And
you have so many years of enjoying them and so many years of stories and emotions to go with them. That's where I feel like if I was going to put Sob Rock right now, of like, honestly, I hate to say this, like, but I'd probably put Sob Rock at the bottom of all the other albums. But it's not because I love Sob Rock. It's amazing. But I just love all those albums. I've had so much longer to love them that I feel like Sob Rock is currently at the bottom, but it's going to cruise its way up and end up somewhere in the middle.
And that's where I'm at on it too. Like realistically, that's probably where I'm at. But like, again, I know myself well enough that like I am still in the like this is awesome.
Yeah. Yeah.
And like where I'm at now, I'm like, it's sitting it for it. And I'm okay with that. And I'm happy with that. And there was a long time where I went, I put Search for Everything above Continuum for a long time. I still probably do.
Yeah.
But a lot of that is so rooted in the memories and the emotions that I have from that record. I saw that tour on the launch of it, and I saw the summer tour.
Yeah.
And I lived through that record. I went through a lot with that record for 4 years because that was basically the crumbs I was living on.
Yeah.
And then every now and then he'd be like, oh, here's some table scraps. Here's New Light. Here's this. And then all of a sudden he's like, oh, hey, by the way, are you hungry? Here's a 3-course meal. Here's Sob Rock. I'm like, yeah, let's go. So again, I know that I'm in the honeymoon phase of this is an album. I'm super happy with it. And let me ask you this question. Is this the album you thought we were going to get next?
I want to say no, but I feel like it depends when you would ask that question, because I feel like he gave us hints and he told us that like Sob Rock and that like kind of New Light and what he was hinting at, this is going to be kind of this is a Sob Rock album. Then I was prepared for it. But if you would have asked me that before, that's completely not where I would have went. Like, I'm not completely surprised because I feel like with John Mayer, I'm almost anticipating being surprised just because he's so unique that it's like, if I'm trying to guess what he's going to do, I'm probably going to be wrong because we're such different people and nobody thinks like that, it's probably going to be something out of left field, which it kind of is, but that's almost, I was expecting something out of left field. So it's hard to answer that question. Like, no, I did not foresee this specific thing, but I thought I had a pretty good feeling it might be something a little bit out there and a little bit different, right? A bit something that he's been desperate to do, kind of the same in the same way that Search for Everything was, right? Like, and I love that.
That was such a big departure from Paradise Valley too. Huge
and departure.
It was. I feel like it was everything. That's what I love about Search for Everything. It was, you took the biggest hits and the themes of every record, you put them in one.
Yeah.
And it was the Search for Everything. And then you have Sob Rock. If 4 years ago I time traveled and I find you in Canada, and I say, hey Nick, we're gonna be friends, like good friends in several years, but like, what do you think the next record? It's called Sob Rock. You'd be like, okay, that's kind of wild. I'm like, there's a song in there called Why You Know Love Me. You would be confused as shit.
Yeah. Yeah.
And you would be like, well, what? Like, what is that? And then I played it for you and you'd be like, whoa.
Yeah.
And I think it's the perfect follow-up record from Search for Everything. And like I said, like, not the one I was expecting. I really wasn't. By the time Search for Everything had concluded and I had my post notifications turned on Twitter, Instagram, whatever this man does, I am watching leaked videos. I'm hearing things about Controlled Danger. I'm hearing songs he's demoing with Dave Chappelle. I'm reading through the track list. I don't recognize any of these things. I'm like, okay, those songs are out there, by the way. Like, there's a song called Real Boy, and there's, I forget some other ones that he had played with Dave Chappelle that are not on Sob Rock. And I know that. I'm like, okay, well, they're out there.
Yeah.
Either that or he didn't think they were Sob Rock worthy, or he's waiting for another record. I don't know. But I didn't think this was the record we were going to get. And my dad was like, are you happy? I'm like, oh, hell yeah, I'm happy. Like, this isn't what I expected. And that's perfect because every time I think I have this man figured out, he's like, no, you're going to get this. And I was like, fuck, I didn't even know I wanted this. I didn't know that I'd have a song called Why You Know Love Me that would make me just question everything. Yeah. I didn't know that was possible. But here we are. And it's all killer, no filler. Go get it. Oh my God.
Download it now. I think we might need to get a little bit of kickback from John just for all the records we're going to be selling here.
Honestly.
And that's, and I like the way you put that. And that's kind of where I was too, of, I knew it wasn't going to be what I want it to be, because what I want it to be is some sort of mixture of, heavier things, Continuum, like Battle Studies, like so much of that of like, just what peak Mayer was to me of when I first fell in love with that first honeymoon phase. And there's a honeymoon phase every time after, but I came in so late of that kind of, like he was already, so many albums in when I came onto the scene that I got to enjoy all those albums at once, and just kind of his what his sound was at that time. And that's still always what's going to be that's true John Mayer to me. And I know him so well, and I know that he's just going to do what he wants to do, and I'm going to enjoy it. But what I love is kind of a couple of those songs on that album, he always does some sort of ode to those older days to make sure that it's a bit of fan service, I think, because I think every time I always feel like yes, he's doing what he wants to do and he's going off on these tangents, but there's always going to be a couple tunes or a couple parts of a couple tunes that harken back to those old days that make me feel those same feelings. And I'm so grateful for that he has that. And it must be a choice. I don't think anybody's that smart and doesn't do things that's calculated, but I think that's a choice to give me
100%.
that little piece. And that's what I'm saying. Like, am I happy? Yes, I'm happy. And I think I could have been unhappy if I would have set my expectations differently for like, if I was going in expecting one of those older albums and then I got Sob Rock, I think I would have went into it, but knowing that I'm going into it and it's going to be something different and I'm ready for that, and know that if he does give me a couple pieces of that old stuff that makes me feel that, I'm going to be happy with that. And sure enough, he did. And a couple of those solos that are in there, that's what I'm there for. Yeah. An album could be completely 180 degrees to what I really like personally, as long as it's got a couple John Mayer type solos on it. I am a happy camper, right? And just like to set the bar low like that and just let him blow it out of the water is great. And I think I'm giving myself a little pat on the back for setting my expectations well, but like, I think that's what it was. And I think so much of what we talked about of some of the hate that we saw in the groups, I think all I saw was that you just set your expectations wrong. Like, I don't think this album is bad. I think you just set your expectations wrong. And
that is the most important thing. I learned after Battle Studies not to set expectations, because Battle Studies came out when I was in 8th grade. Born and Raised came out 2012. Yeah,
I think so, because I was in grade 12.
Yeah. So 3 years later, and Battle Studies was like Continuum. It took the things that he had really figured out from Continuum, like the lyricism and like songwriting, Room for Squares, but like the feelings of Heavier Things. That's why I fuck with Battle Studies. It's everything up to that point. And like, we see this, and I was like, bring me Battle Studies Part 2. I'm like, give me Edge of Desire, like, again. Like, I want to hear that for the first time again. And then you get Queen of California. You get Wait, and all these. I'm like, what? This is so different. This isn't John Mayer I have grown up with. And I think part of,
like Olivia.
And part of the benefit for you, I guess, was that you kind of caught it all at once. Like, those records were already out. So you had a lot of homework. You're like, I'm going to live with Room for Squares for a while. Then I'm going to move on to Heavier Things.
So so I got to take all those albums in at once. Plus what was the one that released? You just said in 2012.
Born and Raised.
And I got all these existing albums to just dive through and tear through, plus a new one. And Born and Raised. And I was such a country guy at that time, like all the listen to. So to hear his take on that, it was just like, this is perfect to just set me up to just dive into his world and just become that super fan. Like, millions of us are, but I just got to dive into it so well. And then the next album, Paradise Valley, was again, similar vein, but even more, a little bit more bluegrass, like just a different tone to it. But again, loved it again. And then
Search for Everything,
which was such a departure. Like, I think that was his welcome back to pop music. And I think he's even said that. Right. And that's what he said. But it was but when you compare the pop music of Search for Everything with his first couple albums that were, he was in that pop world where he had none of that freedom to do what he was. He was asked to make like a pop album. Yeah. Those are so drastically different. Like the pop version of Search for Everything versus what those other ones were. Like, I would say Sob Rock is most clearly his biggest departure from the average of what his catalog has been so far. Right. Yeah. But I think other than Sob Rock, that's what I thought. Search for Everything. This is just another step forward into that of like, they're both the next step of that, which is now in my head. I'm so curious of what I feel like it's hearing what Search for Everything was and getting to see the passion of just him letting his creativity freak flag fly of just, I'm going to make the music I want to make with kind of fuck all the other shit. Right. Like, this is what I want. And it was a bit weird, bit different. Like, and then this is that next manifestation of it of a bit different, but it had a theme to it. Right. And now I'm just thinking in my head of like, where does he go next? Like, I'm just so curious and so, I have no idea. Like, I have no, even inklings of what it's going to be. I'm just excited for it. I have no idea. I feel like it might get even weirder. He might have got his weird stuff out. Now he goes back to more, back to the roots of what it started with. Maybe he gets a little bit folksy. Maybe he goes back to that country feel. Who knows? I think that, kind of like what I was saying. So you were lucky to kind of have it all happen at once. Yeah. And for most Mayer nuts like myself, I grew up, got an album, lived with that album, grew up, another album, live with that album, and then I could go back to that. So I always had like reference points. So when Born and Raised came out, I was just like, this is so different. And my expectations were initially upset. I was like, this is not what I thought it was going to be. And then I realized that's okay.
Stop having expectations. Trust that whatever he's going to put out, you're probably going to fuck with. And to this day, I fuck with all of it.
Yeah.
And I think that Sob Rock thematically is maybe one of his most cohesive thing. Like thematically, the entire like Sob Rock. Like, what is Sob Rock? What does that mean to you?
Yeah.
What does it mean to him? It's like, well, it's music that makes me happy. And like, but I think if we're really looking at Sob Rock as an honest title, half of these songs make you cry or want to cry, but they're rock ballads, and you're like, I don't even care.
Yeah.
It's perfect. Everything about this record is perfect.
Yeah.
And yeah, do I wish there were more songs? Yes. I think 10 is a little short. It's definitely the shortest Mayer record we've ever gotten.
Yeah.
I would have loved for 12 or 13 or even 15 would have been sweet. But what are those songs? What are those extra 3 or 4 songs? Do those fit on this record? And the answer is probably not.
Mm-hmm.
And he even talked about it. He's like, 10 songs. I have had these 10 dialed in and I'm not changing them. This is where they live.
Mm-hmm.
And this is what it's going to be. And I respect the commitment. I respect that he knew what he wanted. He made it happen. The marketing campaign for Sob Rock is so impressive.
Yeah.
When he first started putting things on Instagram, it was everywhere. The merch that was coming out, you'd see it like advertised everywhere. And he was sending those like letters in the mail, like those. And the first page was just like the guitar chords and lyrics for Last Train Home. He's like, play along. His TikTok, he's like, do out with me. I'm like, he is so proud of this record.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm just like, yeah, man, like you did it. Like,
yeah.
awesome. I really hope we don't have to wait another 4 years for another one.
Me too.
Yeah. I mean, that's my biggest thing. So I guess the question is, was this album worth 4 years wait?
Right. And that's where I almost think it's almost too early to say. And
I think it's too early.
I think it's too early to say that, but it is tough because that 4 years of wait is so painful of just that, and that's where it's hard. But I think that's what's so tough is it's so hard. Every year that goes by, it's so much harder not to set expectations, and it's so easy when new music is coming all the time. It's easy to just, okay, we'll take what we can get because we're getting lots. When it's those breaks in between, it's easy to set your expectations of what it's going to be and to get ideas in your head of what it's going to be, that now when it doesn't match with what you had in your head, it brings up a whole different range of feelings. Right. And I think that is the double-edged sword of leaving those gaps and giving yourself that time to build something. And I like that you said that, because that's how I felt about Search for Everything and Sob Rock. Of yes, I definitely enjoyed the album, and there might and they're in there. There's other albums that I like more, but what these ones have is that sense of pride of just, I've carried this flag for John Mayer of so long of just, he is the best, and just, he deserves to be able to do whatever he wants. And just that pride you have of, he's proud of this and he loves what he put out, and this is just him. And it doesn't matter if people like it or don't like it, because I know he likes it and I enjoy that. And I'm just happy that he gets to put things out these days that he's happy with, and that doesn't have all that industry fingerprints on him and all the bullshit that comes away, and just the freedom that he has earned over those years, and all that pain and all that the media twisting him into this person that he's not, and all that heartbreak that he went through is paid for this freedom that he has now to make the music that he's making. And even though some of it might be my style, some of it might not be, it doesn't matter, because I'm just so happy that he's doing that and that he's achieved that spot. And just as a fan, that makes me happy. And that makes it easier to just have less expectations. As, you know what, if he does that and he's just, you know, making the weird music that he enjoys, and I might not like all of it, I might really enjoy some of it and might not like that, that's fine, because I'd much rather him be making what he wants to make and me to just enjoy the parts I don't, and let the parts live that maybe are a little bit less than that, and just enjoy it and just be happy about the fact that he gets new music. Like, I don't care really what an album's going to be like. It's just the fact that he gets to make more music and that he's still doing it, and I get to enjoy it and just take it in and digest it and chew on it.
I mean, we are so lucky. We're 20 years into this thing now that he's been doing this.
Yeah.
And, you know, he could have easily said, I've made my hits and I have nothing left to say.
Mm-hmm.
I hope that we get at least another 2 to 3 records out of him. I think that would be, I don't think it's unreasonable. And I think he's going to keep doing this until he can't.
I hope so. I hope we get another fucking 10 records out of him, right? Like, that's what I'm thinking. Like,
that's the dream. That's the fucking
3 or 4 is like, I really hope it's not anything less than that. Like, I hope we get 1 million albums. Cause like what I'm hoping is that he, you know, puts out a couple more albums, but then at each album, I'm sure there's songs that just didn't fit. And I'm sure he's got a catalog of just songs. I hope he just gets to a point where, he gets another 2 or 3, and then he just takes this is not going to have much theme to it. This is going to be a bit of a mishmash, but here's 30 songs and just go nuts and just to go through them, right? Like,
he did talk
a guy
about,
can dream.
Yeah. Oh yeah. He did talk about Steve Jordan. This was a year or so ago, maybe, I don't know. And they were like, would you ever release the songs that didn't make Continuum? He's like, I thought about it. Maybe like 15 or 20 years. Like once it hits that mark, like, I thought about it, re-releasing the ones that didn't make it, or the ones. Have you ever heard Can't Take That Plane?
Can't Take That Plane. I'm not sure.
Send it to you.
Send it to me.
It is aggressively Continuum. And it was actually the very first song off Continuum.
Oh, really?
And he was demoing it for people. And they're like, yeah, I don't really know how I feel about that. He's like, well, I have this other song. I like it. I don't know if it is the same energy. It's called Waiting on the World to Change, which is like my go-to karaoke song.
Yeah.
I love it. But I will send you Can't Take That Plane. And when you hear that, you are going to be like, this would have fit so well on that record. Yeah. I honestly was on there somewhere. And every now and then I come across it, or like I remind myself, like, Can't Take That Plane exists. It is so bluesy. It is so like rock. Like, and if that had been the very first song we'd heard after Heavier Things, I think we all would have been like, whoa, holy shit. Because I feel like Continuum blows you in a little bit. It goes, Waiting on the World Change, then I Don't Trust Myself, then you get like Belief, then you get Gravity, and you're kind of...
That is a 4-song set. Like, can you imagine, like, who else has an album that has 4 songs like that at the start of just like ultra classic fucking...
Oh, yeah. They're all... That whole record, I mean, Continuum is for the casuals, and don't mean that in a disrespectful way.
Yeah.
But when you talk to people who are like, oh, I love John Mayer, and I'm like, what's your favorite record? Oh, Continuum. God damn it.
Yeah. But I mean, but in all fairness, Continuum might very well be my favorite album too. And I'm anything but a casual, right? Like, because it lives in both worlds, but I think there's a knock you can put on it of, you have to deal with that of exactly. That's the same way of people like, when I bring up MMA because I'm a huge MMA fan. I'm very in depth with it. And you just ask someone like,
into it. You've kind of turned me on to it a bit. So I'm trying to learn more. Every time I see you post, I'm like, oh, what does this mean? I must find it. I must talk to Nick.
But that's the same thing of when someone says, oh, Continues my first album. It's like, oh, who's your favorite fighter? Oh, Conor McGregor. It's like, that just tells me it doesn't necessarily mean that you are a casual and that you don't know that, but it's a pretty good red flag that you probably might not know as much as you think, right? Like if that's when you came on board, and it's just funny to say that it doesn't necessarily mean that you're not that deep, in-depth fan that I want you to be when I meet you. But, if you're saying Continuum's your favorite album, I at least need to ask a few follow-ups to make sure you're a real John Mayer fan, right? Like that's what it needs. Yeah.
I saw, he did a Ask Me Anything on Instagram, maybe a week ago or two. Someone said, have you ever thought about quitting music? If so, what inspired you not to? It's like, yes. One time I handed in an album and was told it had no hits on it.
Right.
I cried, told myself I was going to quit and go to design school. That album was Continuum, which is insane.
Right? No hits on it.
No hits on it. It won several Grammys. I'm not going to sit here and tell you that I don't think Continuum is one of the greatest things ever, because it is. And I do love Continuum. I mean, if I hear Stop That Train, wherever I'm at, I'm just lost in that world. And you have Gravity. I mean, that album really is perfection. There's nothing wrong.
Top to bottom. Like there's not a miss on it.
Everything on that album. I do wish Can't Take That Plane was somehow found a way on there. It would just be the extra little
nuggets.
It is a little nugget. I will send that to you, but I mean, and there's nothing wrong with loving that album. It doesn't make you basic. You just better be able to be like, I love Continuum, but also 83 is awesome. Yeah, and I'm like, we can vibe now. We can talk.
Yeah. Oh, that's funny. But I think that's the exact thing that gives me that happiness and that pride in what he's doing now, is to know what the music industry is and what he's gone through and what bullshit and what fucking leeches and just the worst parts of society that are onto there that are what crumbles. There's so many amazing artists out there that would be just as amazing as John Mayer, but they gave up and they quit because of what that industry does and what pressures they put in. That exact story you just told about John Mayer, the fact that he didn't give up and that he kept going, but that very well could have been that point where that prevented us from getting all that amazing John Mayer goodness. I just think it's such a badge of honor to see somebody that has been through that industry for 20 years and come out on the other side of it still intact and not just totally broken down and beaten into this cookie cutter shape that the industry wants you to be, right? And what we saw, like so many of the lows of John Mayer's career in terms of publicity and the paparazzi and all that stuff, were all just so easily laid at the feet of what that industry does and what they're trying to tear you into and what they're trying to force him into, which he was such a unique unicorn of a person. They're trying to, just shove him into this pop star box. And you see the stresses that creates. That is what manifests into all the negative things that people point to and want to point to of John Mayer. That's exactly what it is. And I just think that highlights the amazingness of him making it through that onto the other side and still being the guy he is and still being able to put out music like he does. And maybe not even the music. What highlights it more to me is current moods and the fact that he can still be that open and vulnerable to his creativity to that level, right? Like with music, it's a little bit tougher, right? Like you have to really know somebody to be able to read what's coming through in their music, and you're never going to fully understand it. But something like Current Mood is so out there and so clearly shows that creativity that they would try with everything they had to stuff and push down, that's still alive and well in him at this age of, into his 40s. He still has that childlike beauty that brings this beautiful music to the world. I just love that. And that makes me so happy that he got through that, because I think that is so rare. And we're going to see that less and less the more people get into that meat grinder that is the music industry.
What I worry about, and I don't worry about it a lot because I still feel like John is very reassuring that he's like, I love this. I love what I'm doing.
Yeah.
I'm going to connect this to somebody else musically. Are you a Billy Joel guy at all?
I'm not a Billy Joel guy. Okay, I just never, I'm unfamiliar.
Yeah. Okay. Well,
I'm Billy Joel agnostic.
Have some talks about that. Yeah. The Stranger is an essential album, but the point is Billy Joel has some huge hits.
Yeah.
And Billy Joel, his last record was in 93. It's called River of Dreams. And that's just one of his famous songs. The very last song, and I have it pulled up here on that record, is called Famous Last Words. And it's like, these are the last words I have to say. And it was basically like, I'm done. Good luck. Like, I'm done making music.
Yeah.
That was in 93. It's 2021. No new Billy Joel. He literally said, all right, hey. And he rang the bell. He was like John. He had, The Stranger. He had 52nd Street. He had Glass Out. Like all these really, really successful records in his career, in his life. And then he just was like, here's my last one. And I'm done. And my dad and I are huge Billy Joel fans. He actually got to see him at Fenway Park a couple of years ago and said it was one of the best concerts ever. My dad and I will talk about it. He's like, I don't get it. He's like, how can he not have new shit to say? It's been 30 years. Like he's gotten remarried. He had a daughter, and he's got to have things to say, and he just doesn't. So my biggest fear, and again, I'm not too worried about it, but I do want, sometimes I'm like, what if John does get to the point where he's like, I'm done. Like, I have nothing left to say. And, Billy Joel did this one, I think, when he's like John's age now, like about that age, like 40 to 50, in that pocket of like, I've done it. I gave you 30 years of hits and he still tours. It's not to say that Billy Joel doesn't still play. He loves, and he's still out there touring and killing it, but it's nothing new.
Right.
And the fan in me and the listener is always like, oh, come on, man. Like, look at the world right now. You got to have some song. You've got to have an opinion. There's got to be moments in his life where he's at home and he's just like putting away groceries and he's just like, oh, no. Oh, that would have been cool. Like, that has to exist in his head. And I always wonder if there will be a day when John Mayer is kind of like, I've done it. I've said what I've needed to say.
The big difference I see there is that when you look at someone like Billy Joel, of the time he was doing that, when you look at 93, there wasn't really anybody, there was no real examples of people that had beaten the music industry. Whereas now there's guys like Chance the Rapper, there's guys that have gone independent, there's ways outside, there's SoundCloud, there's that. And I think what that does was that just loosened the grip a little bit, that got you outside the net, like John Mayer seems to be now, where I think if you look at Billy Joel and what went into it, and to know probably the biggest thing that made him say, I have no more to say, is you have to fight just to get the things that you want to say. You have to fight through all these stupid executives and them trying to put your fingerprints on. That just takes all the joy out of it. Just, I'm done with this. All the music I have created, I went to Heartbreak. I bled for this. I'm going to still go out there and perform it and have a great time with it. But just that process is so awful. I don't want to go through it again. I'm done. I have enough to say. I'm sure if he would have ever experienced making music in a free way outside of that system, he probably would all of a sudden have something to say again, right? Like I bet you he does. But I think the fact that John Mayer's getting a taste of that, he won't ever get on that side where he's losing the love of it, because I think the losing of the love of it is all the rest of it. It's the business side of the game that pulls all that love and just squeezes every, dollar and cent out of it and squeezes all the fun right out. I think that is what gives me hope that guys, not just John Mayer, but guys like John Mayer, the guys that of the newer age that have these examples of getting to the other side and that it can be something amazing. And, it's almost that idea of just getting fuck you money, right? Like that's what you need. It's just, this isn't about the money anymore. I got all the money. Now I'm just going to make what I enjoy. And I feel like so many people are starting to see examples of that. That's what everybody, the American dream is not to get within these systems and work your way up to the top of them. It's to get to the other side where you don't have to be within the systems, where you can get on the other side of it and just do whatever you want and say, you know what? Yeah, that sounds fun. I'll do that. Oh, that sounds awful. I don't want to do that. Fuck you. Right. You don't have to be beholden to all this rigmarole in the game of it. And I think that's awesome to see on that side. And that gives me hope that John is going to put out another 10 albums and they're all going to be great. And then he's going to release just a big 50 song jumble of all the extras that went into it. And we're going to get 1,000 songs and John Mayer's never going to die and he's going to live to 1 million. That's what I think.
You know what? That's great. That's the world I want to.
And if you try and fight me on it, I'll fight you to the death. And I think that's probably where we should leave that. Did we miss anything, or do you think that sums it up?
I think we nailed it, man.
Fucking right. Well, thanks once again for coming on.
Dude, of course. This is always blast. And we got to talk more. I mean,
we do.
Yeah, we love John Mayer. That's very obvious. But we got to get Nick on here one of these times.
Yeah, that'd be tons of fun.
Like, dude, it's always a pleasure talking to you because I don't have anybody really around me who gets it like you do.
Yeah. Me neither.
Nick and my buddy Drew, who was my first roommate at Central Michigan. I've seen John Mayer with him 3 times. And at first he was like, John Mayer, bodies where I'm like, no. You don't get it. I got you. And then after a while I'd come home from class and I just hear, Stop This Train playing. I'm like, yes, we did.
He's figuring it out.
Got him.
It's funny you say that because my best friend Chase, he just recently hopped onto the John Mayer train and he's
board, brother.
and he's like it's just such a fun experience of knowing him for so long. Just be like, well, what's your favorite John Mayer? And him answering, I like this one. Oh, this one's a bop, right? And to be able to put it on and him to sing along, it's like, A, why is it taking you this long? But B, I don't even care. This is awesome. Let's fucking go because this is just so enjoyable.
If you convert them to the light side, you're just happy they're there.
Exactly. You don't need to ask any questions. You don't need to pull on any more strings. Just be happy that you're there.
Yeah,
that's perfect. All right. Well, thanks again for coming on. That was tons of fun, Mike. And we'll do it again soon. Definitely won't wait till John Mayer puts out another album to do this again. Maybe we'll grab Nick and do a 3-way. Not in that way. You know what I mean? Everybody listening, you know what I mean? Don't put words in my mouth. Don't put anything else in my mouth. This is just going off the rails. I told you we should have ended it after John Mayer's living for 1,000 years. Fuck.
Yes.
Oh, well, that's what this podcast is for. Getting a little bit silly. All right. Thanks, Mike. I'll talk to you soon.
Sounds good, man.
All right. See ya.
All right. Another one in the books. And before I forget, I know that if you guys just listened to that full episode, you'll know that I forgot to give Sob Rock a good listen right before. I figured I'd listened to this album enough times. I don't need to. And then I completely whiffed on the last song of the album. And I didn't give my take on it. So I just gave it a quick listen to at the just before recording this outro. And I was just trying to give a really quick, concise, because I know you guys just listened to a really long episode, just my thoughts on that song. And just that last song on the album, to me, that is the classic John Mayer simple song, right? And the reason I say that is because when you listen to that song, it's very simplistic in what it is. And I feel like, or it is and it isn't. It's not, it's very complex and there's all these layers, and every round, every time the progression restarts, there's some new layer and some new instrument that's in there underneath it. It's really hard. You have to listen for it. But that's what I'm saying, because John Mayer is never boring. He's never basic. It's never simple. But as sometimes simple is what you need on an album. So that's like, that song is John Mayer simple to me, right? Like it's his version of, that's as simple as he can get, right? It's still super complex. And, you compare that to any song on, any pop chart anywhere, and it's going to have more complexity and nuance and different layers to it than anything else on there. But as far as John Mayer goes, right? Like, and some just really good guitar playing under it, but I just love that song. It's kind of the perfect way to end it, of just, you go on this ride of the ups and downs of where this album takes you. And then it just sets off with that of just, John Mayer's never simple, like I said, but that's as simple as you can get. And I just love that that's how we ended it. And that's just my thoughts. And that wraps up Sob Rock, the album. Just another amazing one. Can't wait for more John Mayer. If you listen to this and we've convinced you that John Mayer is the GOAT and you want to jump in, go on to YouTube. I think it's called You're Gonna Fly. Just type in John Mayer documentary on YouTube. It's free, and just watch that. That will tell you the story, and that kind of shows a little bit more of who John is, and maybe will change your perspective of just what you got if you just watched, TMZ over the years and kind of have an idea of what John Mayer is, or who John Mayer is in your head. So yeah, other than that, thanks for listening. Please pass it on to a friend, do all those fun things, follow the social medias, give the reviews, rate, pass it on to a friend. That all really helps, and I appreciate it. Other than that, just have a great week. I love you. I hope you love me. We need to spread more love. That's it. That's all. All right? Okay. See you guys. 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 See you guys.